Chapter 178. Bright golden light surged out from Zhu Kun and Ziyan's bodies as their bodies came into contact. Finally, it merged perfectly at the point where their palms met. Almost at the same time, an extremely terrifying pressure spread. Plop! Xing Shan and Xing Shui knelt down on the spot. The Dragon Emperor's might did not give them any room to resist. The father and daughter duo hugged each other tightly for a minute. Ziyan pointed at Chu Bei and said, "Father, it was Boss who saved you. He is also the great benefactor of our ancient dragon tribe." Ziyan immediately told Zhu Kun about the splitting of the ancient dragon island and how Chu Bei had saved the situation. Zhu Kun walked to Chu Bei's side after hearing Ziyan's explanation. He bowed deeply to express his gratitude. "Old Dragon Emperor, how did you end up in such a miserable state given your strength?" At this moment, Gu Yuan's voice sounded. Yao Dan, Lei Ying and the rest of the 6 tribe leaders' eyes were filled with confusion. "Wrong, all of us were wrong. We were all wrong." Zhu Kun released Ziyan. His eyes landed on Gu Yuan as he let out a long sigh. His sigh was filled with a rich unwillingness and regret. "Wrong? What wrong?" Gu Yuan, Yao Dan and the rest frowned and immediately asked. "All of you must have thought that the Tu Shi ancient god had already shattered the void and ascended to an even vaster world outside of the Do Chi continent. Moreover, he had left behind the emperor-grade embryonic pill that could allow one to advance to the Do D class." Zhu Kun exhaled a long breath and spoke in a faint voice. "Is there a problem?" Gu Yuan and the rest frowned even more. This was indeed what they thought. It is true that there is an emperor-grade embryonic pill and it can indeed allow one to advance to the Do D class. However, the Tu Shi ancient god did not shatter the void. Moreover, it was controlled by an evil thought that did not belong to our Do Chi continent. Zhu Kun clenched his fists tightly as he spoke until this point. He spoke in a deep voice with hatred. "The reason why I ended up like that was because of this evil thought. Even if the Tu Shi ancient god and I joined hands, we were no match for that evil thought. We were merely ants in front of it." "What?" "An evil thought that did not belong to the continent." When they heard Zhu Kun's words, the pupils of the experts from the 6 clans suddenly shrank, and their faces were filled with shock. Even Chu Bei couldn't help but frown. The development of the situation seemed to have deviated from the direction he had predicted. Now, he had already used up all of his level 11 merchandise rights. Relying on his level 10 merchandise rights, his strongest combat power was only at the pseudo-emperor level. From what Zhu Kun had said, the evil thought that controlled the Tu Shi ancient god was above that of a Do Di. If I remember correctly, he came from some great thousand world. Zhu Kun pondered. "The great wide world? Where is that?" Gu Yuan asked. "The place where the Do Di went after breaking through the sky. Our Do Chi continent is merely one of the continents within the Great Thousand World." Zhu Kun continued. "I really want to take a look." A yearning look appeared in Gu Yuan's eyes. Just as he finished speaking, he seemed to have thought of something and quickly looked at Chu Bei. "Boss Chu, you're not from the Great Wide World, are you? Beyond the Great Thousand Worlds, there is an even vaster world." Chu Bei pretended to be profound. He gave Gu Yuan a look and allowed the other party to figure it out himself. "In short, we cannot stay here for long. Let's quickly leave this place before that evil thought discovers us." However, the 100,000 feet large door, which had already been opened, was once again shut with a bang after Zhu Kun's anxious voice sounded. "Since you have come, you should stay behind." In the next moment, a low and deep voice that seemed to have originated from hell sounded within this deathly silent space. Zhu Kun's expression changed drastically when he heard this voice. Horror surged into his eyes. "Is that evil thought speaking?" Gu Yuan looked at Zhu Kun. Before Zhu Kun could reply, a strand of strange energy enveloped everyone in this deathly silent void. In the blink of an eye, everyone was brought to a floating island by this strange energy. Following the appearance of Chu Bei's group, the loneliness that had permeated the island for tens of thousands of years was suddenly broken. "Has the ancient god mansion formed a world of its own?" The eyes of the experts from the 6 clans hurriedly swept in all directions after they landed on the ground. Somehow, this place seems to have a great suppression on spiritual strength, Gu Yuan muttered to himself. Even the strength of a peak Doshing's soul was unable to probe beyond 1,000 feet radius. It is unexpected that I have returned to this place after 1,000 years. Zhu Kun sighed emotionally. His eyes cautiously swept over this strange space. It was as though he was afraid of something. At a glance, there was an ancient stone hall in the middle of the island. The stone hall stood quietly. An ancient aura spread and reverberated across the sky. There was an incomparably large square in front of the stone hall. Many 10,000 feet large sky-supporting pillars stood on both sides of the square. The experts from the 6 clans had just arrived at the square when a majestic aura pounced over. That is the mysterious yellow flame. Yan Jin's footsteps suddenly paused as he walked on the square. His eyes were firmly locked onto the top of a stone pillar. There was a cluster of deep yellow flame rising at that spot. Being the owner of many heavenly flames, he was able to recognize the mysterious yellow flame, which was ranked 23rd on the heavenly flame ranking. 10,000 Beast Spirit Flame, ranked 22nd on the heavenly flame ranking. Yin Yang Twin Flame, ranked 21st on the heavenly flame ranking. Netherworld Poison Flame, ranked 20 on the heavenly flame ranking. Green Lotus Core Flame, ranked 19 on the heavenly flame ranking. Yan Jin's eyes swiftly swept over the top of the other stone pillars. The more he looked, the more excited he became. Other than the top 3 on the heavenly flame ranking, the remaining heavenly flames were actually present on these stone pillars. Gu Yuan, Yao Dan and the rest looked at the clusters of heavenly flames. Although they were not as excited as Yan Jin, their faces also revealed surprise. Side mission activated. Host will obtain all the heavenly flames present. Mission completion reward: 1 use of a level 12 high-tier commodity. The system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind while everyone was intensely discussing the heavenly flames on the stone pillars. Chu Bei was initially startled. After recovering, a smile was lifted from the corner of his mouth. The next moment, Chu Bei waved his left hand and a golden circular plate appeared. He waved his right hand and a 7-colored flame swept over the heavenly flames on the stone pillars. In an instant, another 20 clusters of heavenly flames were added to the 7-colored flame. After that, the 7-colored flame wrapped around the 20 clusters of heavenly flames and entered the golden circular plate. Witnessing this scene, all the powerful figures, including the ancient void dragon, could not help but be startled. Their faces were filled with astonishment. Their astonishment naturally stemmed from Chu Bei's bandit-like actions. Secondly, it stemmed from the other party's terrifying strength. He was actually able to subdue 20 clusters of heavenly flames at the same time. Host will obtain all the heavenly flames present. Mission completion reward: 1 use of a level 12 high-tier commodity. When the system's voice sounded, Chu Bei became even more calm and collected. With the use of a level 12 high-tier commodity in hand, he could be considered to have the confidence to face the unknown evil thoughts. Rumble! Not long after Chu Bei kept the heavenly flames on the stone pillars, a loud noise sounded above everyone. Looking over, they saw a stone statue that was 10,000 feet tall appear out of thin air above their heads. The stone statue had the appearance of an old man. Gu Yuan and the rest were no strangers to that appearance. It was the Tu-Shi ancient god. The stone statue floated in the void, emitting an extremely powerful aura that seemed to be above heaven and earth. Under such an aura, the powerful figures of the 6 clans felt as if they were being suppressed by Mount Tai. They tried their best to circulate their battle energy to resist. Many balls of light danced around the stone statue. It was gorgeous and dazzling. Are those the cultivation methods and battle skills that the Tu-Shi ancient god collected? Looking at the balls of light above, the powerful figures were overjoyed. These balls of light were actually some ancient scrolls. From the scrolls, they could feel an extremely powerful spirituality. This spirituality was not inferior to the so-called heaven-level cultivation methods or battle skills in the outside world. This is the first time in thousands of years that this place is so lively. Little Loach, I didn't expect you to regain consciousness and even bring such a group of people. Especially that fellow, he can actually swallow so many heavenly flames at the same time. That energy and aura makes me a little envious. I can't wait to eat him up now. Suddenly, an old voice sounded in everyone's ears. Looking towards the direction of the voice, a figure appeared on the right shoulder of the stone statue. He stood with his hands behind his back and looked at everyone below calmly. His expression was as if he was looking at ants. "To she ancient god!" Yao Dan and the rest immediately exclaimed involuntarily when their eyes swept over the plain-robed old man. The latter's appearance was clearly exactly the same as the stone statue. His unique bright long hair was also something that no one could create. "Old Dragon Emperor, the feeling that the aura on his body gives me is a little different from the figure that we saw through the Tu Shi ancient god jade earlier. I even have a feeling that his strength is similar to mine. It is not impossible to fight him." Gu Yuan glanced at the old man on the stone statue, who was emitting a powerful aura. He looked at Zhu Kun with some confusion. Zhu Kun lifted his eyes and swept them over the old man. He emitted a cold snort. "This is because he is not the Tu Shi ancient god. Instead, he is the D-tier embryonic pill." After he finished speaking, a trace of disdain appeared in Zhu Kun's eyes as he looked at the emperor-grade embryonic pill. "Submitting to the evil intent from the great thousand world in order to survive. You have done well. It is at least better than your end. All of you have become puppets," the D-tier embryonic pill retorted. "What? It is the D-pill." The experts from the 6 clans widened their mouths when they heard Zhu Kun's words. Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, Yan Jin and the rest were initially startled. Immediately, a strange luster was emitted from their eyes. Their eyes contained joy. "Why? Don't tell me that you bunch of ants are planning to target me?" The old man on the stone statue cried out furiously when he sensed the greed in the eyes of Gu Yuan's group. "Attack!" Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan and Laying faced each other and smiled. After which, their expressions swiftly became dense. Zhu Kun and Gu Yuan took the lead to shoot forward after their orderly cry sounded. Monstrous dou qi spread. Finally, it turned into a tide that ruthlessly smashed towards the D-tier embryonic pill. "Is that all?" The D-tier embryonic pill glanced at the attack of Zhu Kun's group. He laughed coldly. One could see his finger gently being pressed forward. The monstrous energy tide that was heading towards him was cut apart by his finger. Zhu Kun and Gu Yuan clearly did not expect to be able to obtain the D-tier embryonic pill with a single attack. Their auras continued to soar. Chapter 179. The energy in the battlefield suddenly became wild and violent following the rise of Zhu Kun's and Gu Yuan's auras. Adding the strength of Yao Dan, Lei Ying and Yan Jin, an attack that could cause the world to crumble continuously attacked the D-tier embryonic pill. The D-tier embryonic pill still did not reveal any fear in the face of the combined attack of 7 top experts. A heart-palpitating ripple spread as it raised its hand. In the end, it forcefully blocked the combined attack of the 7 of them. The observing experts from the 6 clans involuntarily inhaled a breath of cool air as they watched the battle above. Just the D-tier embryonic pill was actually able to fight against 7 ultimate experts on the continent without being at a disadvantage. Just how frightening would it be if the real Tu Shi ancient god was present? It was likely that the D-pressure that was unleashed would be able to suppress them until they were unable to move. "It is really a waste of time to fight with all of you. Once that puppet ancient god arrives, it will deal with all of you." The D-tier embryonic pill's aura once again rose after the cry that carried ridicule and disdain sounded. After forcing back the 7 experts with one attack, it rushed towards Chu Bei's location. Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and Yao Dan stopped their pursuit at the same time when they saw the D-tier embryonic pill suddenly turn to attack Chu Bei. They withdrew the attacks that they were about to unleash as a mocking smile appeared on the corners of their mouths. This D-tier embryonic pill could have offended anyone, but it just had to offend the unfathomable boss Chu. The D-tier embryonic pill frowned after sensing the playful expression of Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the rest. The D-tier embryonic pill's eyes continued to lock onto Chu Bei after being unable to understand why Zhu Kun and the rest had such an expression. It involuntarily licked its lips. I am actually very interested in you. Perhaps I might also be able to step into the D stage after swallowing you. The D-tier embryonic pill was intoxicated when it was still 10 meters away from Chu Bei. It inhaled a deep breath of air. Its eyes were filled with greed as it looked at Chu Bei. Chu Bei crossed his hands in front of his chest. He involuntarily laughed after hearing the words of the D-tier embryonic pill. An inexplicable chill surged within the D-tier embryonic pill after seeing Chu Bei's smile, especially the latter's eyes that seemed to be looking at prey. Imperial Pill Palm! The eyes of the embryonic Emperor Pill narrowed. He didn't hesitate and took the initiative to attack. His body suddenly shifted and he sent a palm strike towards Chu Bei. The moment his palm struck out, a dazzling ball of light about the size of a human head emerged. Chi, chi, chi. Along with the appearance of this gorgeous ball of light, the energy of this world was like boiling oil that had encountered a hot flame, suddenly burning fiercely. As far as the eye could see, the entire sky above the square was filled with burning flames. The void seemed to have turned into a furnace at this moment. The expressions of Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others changed slightly when they saw the might of the D-tier embryonic pill's palm. They had never expected that the D-tier embryonic pill had actually not used its full strength in the previous battle. The Emperor-grade embryonic pill stared coldly at Chu Bei. As it pressed its hands down, the flames in the world whizzed down at an astonishing speed. In a short instant, the endless flames that filled the world all entered the brilliant ball of light. Destroy! With a slap of his palm, the entire world darkened. Little guy, you don't understand the situation. Out of so many people, you just have to choose me. 18 balls of light appeared in front of Chu Bei after his mocking voice sounded. They were saber, spear, sword, halberd, axe, hook, fork, whip, mace, hammer, dagger, axe, mace, pole, lance, rod, spear, and rake. They corresponded to the 18 different weapons. However, these were not ordinary weapons. Every single one of them was a high-grade level 10 offensive weapon that Chu Bei had used his desire points to exchange for. Every single weapon was equivalent to the might of a Ban Emperor. How is this possible? The D-tier embryonic pill's face was instantly filled with horror as it looked at the 18 different weapons that had appeared and sensed the terrifying might contained within each of them. However, before it could turn around and flee, the 18 different weapons surrounded it from 18 different directions. Soon after, they all charged forward together. 18 different sharp attacks that carried a destructive might smashed towards it. The palm strike that the D-tier embryonic pill had unleashed was directly annihilated by the energy shockwaves from the 18 different weapons. Threads of white smoke quickly seeped out of the D-tier embryonic pill's body under the encirclement of the 18 different weapons. A sharp, miserable cry also suddenly sounded. The body of the D-tier embryonic pill gradually began to shrink. It was showing signs of turning into a medicinal pill. Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest shook their heads and laughed bitterly when they saw this scene. The D-tier embryonic pill, which was not inferior to the 7 of them, had been reduced to such a miserable state in the next moment. Withdraw! The D-tier embryonic pill let out a miserable cry after Chu Bei's cry sounded. It turned back into a crystal-clear, exquisite medicinal pill. Immediately, a medicinal fragrance spread and filled the entire space. Everyone merely took 2 deep breaths as they sniffed the medicinal fragrance. They discovered that the dou qi in their bodies, which had reached a bottleneck, had once again become active and showed signs of breaking through. The faces of the experts from the 6 clans were filled with joy when they sensed the change in their bodies. This was indeed worthy of being in D-tier medicinal pill. Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the rest exchanged glances with each other as they watched the D-tier pill in Chu Bei's hand. Some helplessness appeared on their faces. They also greatly desired this D-tier pill. After all, it was the foundation of the path to becoming a DD. However, they did not have the courage to snatch the D-tier pill from Chubei's hands. Buzz buzz buzz, soon after Chubei subdued the D-tier pill, tens of thousands of strange light rays suddenly shot out from the ground in the heavenly flame square. Following which, a strange fluctuation suddenly rose from the many sky-reaching stone pillars. Circular ripples spread apart. The frequency of the stone pillars trembling increased. In the end, one could hear a continuous cracking sound as a deep and huge black hole appeared in the middle of the heavenly flame square. Blood-purple light spread from the black hole. This light was just like a thin veil that instantly covered the bodies of everyone in the square. Bang bang bang! Following the cover of the blood-purple light, the faces of the top experts in the square, including Yao Dan, Lei Ying, Yan Jin and the rest, suddenly paled. Both of their legs knelt down. It was as if the thin layer of blood-purple light possessed a great amount of pressure. After Lei Ying's group, Gu Yuan's and Zhu Quan's bodies also slowly bent downwards. The bones all over their bodies emitted a clear cracking sound at this moment. Their faces had also turned red. Bang bang! This kind of endurance did not last for long. The two of them were finally exhausted. Their knees landed on the ground with a bang. For a time, only Chubei was able to maintain a calm and unruffled attitude in the square. "He is here!" Zhu Quan's face was flushed red. He clenched his teeth. However, his body appeared to be pressed by Mount Tai and was unable to move. "Him? The true Tu-Shi ancient god!" Gu Yuan's eyes shrunk. His struggle was futile and he relaxed. Being suppressed by an elite Dou-Di was not considered much of a humiliation. Chi chi chi. Bright flames surged out from the black hole amidst the burning sound. In an instant, the heavenly flame square had turned into a sea of fire. The color of the sea of fire was extremely colorful. It possessed an unusual and stunning beauty. Gu Yuan, Zhu Quan and the rest of the experts within the sea of fire crazily maneuvered the Dou-Chi within their bodies to form an armor to resist the burning of the sea of fire. Another couple of seconds passed. Flames churned and agglomerated within the bright sea of fire. They transformed into a huge fire flower bud that slowly bloomed. An elderly figure wearing a dark-colored robe appeared in front of everyone's eyes. His long hair was especially eye-catching because there were actually 21 different colors. However, the eyes of the old man appeared extremely empty. It was as though he had lost his soul. The old man sat on the fire flower bud. His empty eyes landed on Chubei's body. The experts from the 6 clans in the square were stunned as they looked at the old man. They had already seen this face twice. However, the first 2 times, one was an illusory figure, and the other was a deep hill. Both could be said to be fake. However, the person in front of them was the genuine Tu-Shi ancient god. He is indeed worthy of having swallowed a heavenly flame to become a DD. Yan Jin was startled as he looked at the old man. His eyes were filled with shock as he sensed the fire energy within the other party's body. There were records regarding the Tu-Shi ancient god. Everything in the world has its own spirit. It was the same for a heavenly flame. There was once a heavenly flame that was born in the world. It took 1,000 years to form and 10,000 years to gather its spirit. After it gained intelligence, it roamed around for 1,000 years and survived by swallowing flames. The flames that it swallowed were all ranked on the heavenly flame ranking. There were 20 types of flames on it that had been swallowed by it. After this heavenly flame succeeded, it called itself the Emperor Flame. After which, it once again trained for 1,000 years before being born. It was respectfully called the Tu-Shi ancient god. The Tu-Shi ancient god stared at Chubei from above the square. A monstrous bloody aura surged out from his body. It instantly merged with the sea of fire and formed an endless sea of blood. Chubei's eyes met the Tu-Shi ancient god's. His expression was calm and there was not the slightest panic. "Retreat! We cannot stay here!" Zhu Quan and Gu Yuan immediately gave the order after sensing the unusual atmosphere above. The next moment, the experts from the 6 clans swiftly withdrew from the heavenly flame square and flew towards the empty space in the distance. One was the most famous genuine Dou-Di in the past 1,000 years. The other was a mysterious existence, whose strength was unknown, who might have come from outside the Do-Chi continent. The battle between the two of them was sufficient to destroy the world. If one were to be caught in it, even a peak Do-Xing would have difficulty escaping death. Everyone, including Zhu Kun and Gu Yuan, held their breaths as they looked at the two figures facing each other in the distant sky above the heavenly flame square. Although the two figures had yet to make a move, their auras had already spread out like a mountain. Crash, crash. The sea of blood was monstrous and spread across the sky. The empty eyes of the Tu-Shi ancient god were suddenly filled with a scarlet blood color. The dead silence suddenly shattered after the Tu-Shi ancient god stepped out of the fire flower bud. In an instant, the entire sky began to tremble. The monstrous sea of blood wildly churned and directly transformed into 100,000 feet large blood wave. The Tu-Shi ancient god was expressionless. After emitting a strange cry from his mouth, the heavenly flame square rumbled and split apart into a huge deep abyss. Within the deep abyss, crimson magma shot up into the sky like a fountain. Finally, it merged into the monstrous sea of blood. The two forces intertwined as they ruthlessly swept towards Chu Bei with an apocalyptic might. Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the many experts in the distance were shocked as they looked at the 100,000 feet tall terrifying blood wave. After exhaling a long breath, their grave eyes landed on Chu Bei. Chapter 180. On the battlefield, Chu Bei looked at the monstrous wave of blood that covered the sky and covered the earth with the power to destroy the world. His expression did not change, and he still maintained a calm and composed posture. The host has successfully exchanged for a level 12 upper grade product. You have obtained half of the fire god Zhu Rong's power. Time limit is 15 minutes. The moment the system's voice rang out, a loud rumble sounded above Chu Bei's head. After that, under the astounded gazes of Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the other experts, an enormous gap suddenly appeared in the originally calm sky above Chu Bei, and boundless flames poured down from within the gap. It was different from the aura of the heavenly flames that they had come into contact with. The flames that poured down from the gap were filled with an energy aura that they had never come into contact with before. In fact, the flames even carried an aura that made them want to submit. Amidst the rumble, a huge shadow holding a fire spear appeared in the gap where the flames were surging. The shadow swept across the surroundings expressionlessly. It seemed as if it was looking down on the world. Just as Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others were guessing the origin of the shadow holding the fire spear, the huge shadow turned into a ray of light and entered Chu Bei's body in an instant. In the next moment, Chu Bei's aura underwent a tremendous change. Apart from his aura, he seemed to have become a different person. A fire god's spear also appeared in his hand out of thin air. If one looked carefully, the fire god's spear was held by the huge shadow that had entered his body earlier. The monstrous wave of blood was getting closer and closer to Chu Bei. However, just as the monstrous wave of blood was about to drown Chu Bei, the latter's eyes lit up with a red light. Rumble! Immediately, an invisible but real terrifying energy spread out with Chu Bei as the center. In an instant, the monstrous wave of blood that was surging towards Chu Bei was pushed away by this energy. It could not even get close to half a meter away from the former. You can wait at the side first. Chu Bei glanced indifferently at the Tu-Shi ancient emperor whose eyes were empty. After his calm voice sounded, he clenched his right hand. With a bang, the void trembled. The void around the Tu-Shi ancient emperor was distorted. A flame prison trapped the Tu-Shi ancient emperor. Bang! Bang bang! Inside the flame prison, no matter how the Tu-Shi ancient emperor frantically smashed into it, the walls of the prison were not damaged at all. He actually trapped the Tu-Shi ancient gods so easily. He's still trapped by flames. Could it be that Boss Chu's attainments in playing with fire are even above the Tu-Shi ancient emperor? The latter is an existence that has devoured 20 types of heavenly flames. Witnessing this scene, the experts of the 6 clans were horrified. Even the eyes of Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, Yao Dan, and the other top experts were filled with rich shock. Stop hiding! At this moment, Chu Bei looked towards the southwest not far from the Tu-Shi ancient emperor. Just as Chu Bei's calm voice fell, under the confused gazes of the experts of the 6 clans, a black ball of light appeared out of thin air in the southwest. The moment the black ball of light appeared, the originally scorching temperature above the heavenly flame square suddenly turned cold. Looking closely, there was a translucent human face in the ball of light, but it was impossible to see its specific appearance. That's it! This is it! That evil thought that came from the great thousand world! Shu Kuan's face clearly revealed a terrified expression when he saw the dark black ball of light. Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the rest also had an additional grave expression in their eyes as they stared at the dark black ball of light with great caution. It is unexpected that other than it, there is actually another fellow like you on this continent who has also reached this level. A low and deep cold in the forest voice was emitted from the dark black ball of light. Soon after, 2 blood-red eyes shot out and were fixed on Chu Bei's body. With it and you, I should be able to recover. Chi. The dark black ball of light penetrated the void after the voice sounded. It directly passed through the flame cage and entered the body of the Tu-Shi ancient emperor. Almost at the same time, the originally empty eyes of the Tu-Shi ancient emperor had an additional ruthless expression. It was as though he had gained consciousness. However, it was obvious that this consciousness did not belong to the Tu-Shi ancient emperor. Instead, it was the evil thought that had entered the Tu-Shi ancient emperor's body earlier. Perhaps it was due to the support of the evil thought, but the aura of the Tu-Shi ancient emperor swiftly soared. In the end, the energy ripple that erupted from it actually broke apart the flame cage. Emperor Flame Lightning! A cold in the forest cry was emitted from the Tu-Shi ancient emperor's mouth. His right hand swept across the surrounding raging flames. As his finger was pointed, the raging flames shrunk and gathered. After which, they began to wiggle intensely like a huge organ. As the boundless flames contracted, the sky collapsed, and a pitch-black spatial gap spread out at a terrifying speed. In the next instant, a dark black crack line suddenly spread open above Chu Bei. Countless mountain-sized fire lightning came pouring down in a crazy manner like a torrential downpour. The flame lightning churned. The strength that each of them contained caused the faces of Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the rest in the distance to turn pale. This is the strength of that evil thought. It is even stronger than the Tu-Shi ancient emperor. He is currently using the Tu-Shi ancient emperor to unleash his remarkable ability. Zhu Kuan looked at the Tu-Shi ancient emperor in the battlefield with incomparable fear. It was not difficult to hear the fear within his words. Within the battlefield, Chu Bei lifted his eyes and looked at the flame lightning that came falling from above his head. His right hand held the fire god's spear and shook slightly. Immediately, a flame formed from dozens of different colors swept out from the tip of the spear. Subsequently, it evolved into a fire giant that stood in the sky. The fire giant widened its mouth. Immediately, the entire place became silent. Incomparably brilliant flame light beams that were formed from a couple of different colors were suddenly shot out from its mouth and collided with the countless flame lightning. Rumble! The flame light beams collided with the flame lightning in the sky. Accompanied by an earth-shaking loud sound, the entire empty space trembled under this incomparably intense energy fluctuation. Many huge cracks were formed. However, the rolling flame lightning merely lasted for a couple of seconds before it became weak and was swallowed by the flame light beams. This flame, how is it possible? Don't tell me that you have also reached this stage by swallowing a heavenly flame? That's not right. The aura of your flame is very strange. It is different from it. It does not belong to this continent. The eyes of the Tu-Shi ancient god, who had been invaded by the evil thought, shrunk as he watched the flame light beam that destroyed the flame lightning and disappeared into the dark black gap. Some shock flashed across his eyes. Don't tell me that you have also mistakenly entered this continent like me. Is that all you've got? Chu Bei did not reply to the evil thought's question. Instead, he crossed his hands in front of his chest and had a mocking expression on his face. The expression of the Tu-Shi ancient god sunk upon hearing this. It was extremely ugly. His blood-red eyes began to transition into a black-purple color. From the looks of the situation earlier, Boss Chu has not only received the attack of the evil thought, but he has also gained the upper hand. Gu Yuan glanced at Zhu Kun beside him. After which, he locked his gaze on Chu Bei and said, "Perhaps with this Boss Chu around, our situation is not as bad as I had imagined." Zhu Kun's eyes were firmly fixed on Chu Bei. Based on what the evil thought had said, it seems that this Boss Chu has really come from the great thousand world just like him. Yao Dan spoke in a deep voice. "Have all of you forgotten that Boss Chu had once said that there is an even vaster world outside of the great thousand world?" Yan Jin added. "We still have a very long way to go on the path of cultivation. At the very least, we must first walk out of this Do Chi continent and head to the great thousand world to take a look." Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest exchanged glances with each other. Their faces were filled with yearning. Soon after, they glanced at the figure on the battlefield. Their eyes were filled with respect. "Do not think that you can fight with me just because you were able to receive my previous attack." The purple-black cold eyes of the two Shi ancient god locked onto Chu Bei in the sky. His dense cold voice had just sounded when he opened his mouth towards the huge black hole in the middle of the heavenly flame square. Immediately, a suction force surged out. The endless black light within the black hole rushed into his mouth from all directions. After the black light was swallowed by the two Shi ancient god, his body suddenly swelled. A strange black glow that was like a surging river swiftly whistled out from the pores all over his body. Within a short instant, he turned into 100,000 feet tall black fog giant. Clusters of black light balls that emitted cracking sounds lingered around his body. The black fog giant stood in the sky and covered the entire sky. Under this frightening visual impact, Yao Dan, Lei Ying, and the rest did not doubt that just a random punch from the two Shi ancient god would be able to easily kill all the experts from the 8 ancient clans. Compared to before, the frightening aura on the body of the two Shi ancient god had once again risen to another level. Just the act of inhaling and exhaling caused wind and lightning to surge. When he exhaled, the energy of the entire empty space formed a huge ripple. Could this be the body of a Do Di? The expressions of Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest changed as they looked at the 100,000 feet tall black fog giant. Being from an ancient clan, they were naturally aware of the legends of a Do Di. A true elite Do Di was able to absorb the world into their body. At that time, they would be the world. A simple gesture would be able to break the sky. Their strength was terrifyingly great. This kind of enormous body was not formed from energy. Instead, it was an actual physical body. This kind of ability to transform into 100,000 feet tall body was called the body of a Do Di. Compared to the shocked expressions of Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest, Chu Bei merely glanced indifferently at the black fog giant. The corner of his mouth contained a faint smile. His emotions did not fluctuate even a little. One's strength is not determined by one's size. Chu Bei held the fire god's spear in his hand. His voice carried a teasing tone as it drifted over the battlefield. The 100,000 feet large black fog giant emitted a cold snort when it met Chu Bei's disdainful eyes. After which, its large legs stepped forward. A fist that was accompanied by wind, clouds, and lightning smashed towards Chu Bei. Immediately, the sky collapsed. Chu Bei unhurriedly lifted the fire spear in his hand. The tip of the spear met the fist of the black fog giant. In front of the black fog giant's fist, the fire god's spear in Chu Bei's hand was so tiny that it was not even comparable to a speck of dust. However, in comparison, such a small fire spear had forcefully stopped the frightening fist, which was thousands of times larger. Not only that, a monstrous energy suddenly surged out from the tip of the inconspicuous spear while the experts from the 6 clans were stunned. Under this energy, the 100,000 feet large black fog giant was directly sent flying. A mouthful of blood was spat out. It was as if red blood was flowing in the sky. Half step to Heavenly Sovereign! You have actually come into contact with this level! The 100,000 feet large black fog giant stabilized its body. Its large eyes once again looked at Chu Bei. A horrified expression surfaced on its face. You do not belong here. Why do you want to harm the living things on this continent? Listen to my advice. Leave that body as soon as possible and allow it to return. You should enter reincarnation. Chu Bei calmly looked at the black fog giant and advised. Mind your own business. Black mysterious explosion. Upon hearing Chu Bei's words, the horrified expression in the black fog giant's eyes disappeared. It was replaced by an even more intense murderous intent. Cold in the forest's low shout rang out. A frightening black energy storm swept out with the black fog giant as the center. Several long dragons formed from black energy roared as they charged towards Chu Bei. Stubborn. Waves of energy whistled by his ears. The smile on Chu Bei's face gradually disappeared. Then, he held the fire god's spear with both hands. The fire god's spear danced and stabbed out. The spear ray, which was wrapped in blazing flames, flashed past. Slash! After piercing through the long black energy dragon with an unstoppable force, it rapidly enlarged. Under the terrified gaze of the black fog giant, the spear ray arrived in the blink of an eye. At this moment, the spear ray had already reached 100,000 feet long. It was even slightly longer than the black fog giant's body. In the next instant, a frightening and strange voice rang in the ears of Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the others. Under the astonished gazes of the experts of the 6 clans, the spear ray directly pierced through the black fog giant's body. Then, a mournful wail was emitted from the black fog giant's mouth. It resounded through the entire void. Amidst the wail, the black fog giant's body shrunk continuously until it returned to the size of an ordinary person. The black ball of light, which had a translucent human face, flew out from the 2 ancient god's body. It struggled and rolled in the void in pain. Its hoarse wail made one feel pity for it. Its black and purple eyes stared fiercely at Chu Bei. They were filled with monstrous hatred. As for the 2 ancient god, he directly fell from the sky like a corpse and landed on the square with a bang. Chu Bei glanced at the 2 ancient god. After that, his gaze returned to the ball of evil thoughts, and he stabbed out with his spear again. The spear ray was so fast that it arrived in the blink of an eye. The ball of light did not even have time to dodge before it was pierced through by the spear ray. The ball of light was directly split into 2 by the spear ray. One of the balls was still the translucent human face that was filled with monstrous murderous intent. The other ball was an old man with long hair. It was the appearance of the 2 ancient god. Under Chu Bei's guidance, the ball of light with the old man with long hair slowly flew into the body of the 2 ancient god on the square below, and merged into one. Not long later, the corpse-like 2 ancient god slowly opened his eyes. Compared to the empty space earlier, the current 2 ancient god clearly had his own consciousness. Under the gazes of the experts from the 6 clans, the 2 ancient god quickly flew in front of Chu Bei. He placed his palms together and bowed sincerely. His consciousness has returned. This is the true 2 ancient god. Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the rest were enlightened after witnessing this scene. Thank you for your help, senior. The 2 ancient god looked at Chu Bei with gratitude. You should no longer continue to stay on this mainland. Leave behind your inheritance and head to the wider world. Chu Bei's gaze met with the 2 ancient gods as he spoke faintly. I have schemed for thousands of years and all my efforts have been destroyed by you. You deserve to die. At this moment, the evil thoughts not far away stopped struggling. They let out a cold in the forest roar that caused one's heart to tremble. Chapter 181. Within the battlefield, Xian Yan's blood-red eyes were firmly locked onto Chu Bei. His voice that was filled with monstrous hatred sounded. Xian Yan appeared to have made some kind of difficult decision. Xian Yan's half-transparent face suddenly began to burn in front of Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest. A faint black flame lit up in the empty space. At the same time, Xian Yan closed his eyes and used the burning black flame to draw a strange picture in the air. His face was filled with sincerity. Everything he was doing appeared to be an ancient summoning ritual. Moreover, the completion of this summoning ritual required him to exhaust all of his spirit strength. Rumble! As more and more strange diagrams were formed, the vast ancient emperor's cave abode started to tremble violently. When the evil thought stopped drawing, a loud bang resounded. The entire world within the ancient emperor's cave exploded. Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others saw a tremendous change in their vision. Where are we? Are we still in the ancient god mansion? Or are we still in the Dou Qi continent? Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the rest faced each other as they looked at their unfamiliar surroundings. Below them was an endless mountain range. However, these mountain ranges were floating in the empty space. Gu Yuan and the rest were unaware that they had become the focal point of the entire Dou Qi continent at this moment. They appeared to have been magnified many times. Every corner of the Dou Qi continent could see them and their surroundings as long as one raised their head. Quickly look at the sky. Who are those people? Boss Chu is there. Where are they? At this moment, all the experts on the Dou Qi continent were alarmed by the scene in the sky. If one were to talk about the region with the greatest impact, it would be the Central Plains. This was especially the case for the Pill Tower, Burning Flame Valley, Ice River Valley, and other top-tier factions within the Central Plains. Even if I die, I want you to accompany me in death. Perhaps it was because Xian Yan had ignited his spirit strength to draw the strange picture, but the murderous intent in his eyes only increased when he looked at Chu Bei. Xian Yan's stern cry sounded. A strange voice that was difficult to understand was emitted from his mouth. It was as though he was sincerely praying. An incomparably large, dazzling halo gradually appeared in the sky above Chu Bei's group. It was a bright golden light. In just a short moment, a vast aura pervaded the battlefield, and the endless mountain range below shook. This vast aura even began to spread throughout the entire Dou Qi continent. The two Xi ancient god, Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest were startled as they looked at the dazzling light halo above. It seemed as though an unimaginably terrifying existence was about to appear at that spot. Where is the battlefield? Is it really above us? Is there going to be a terrifying existence in that halo? Countless experts of the Central Plains stared fixedly at the sky. As they felt the vast aura pouring down, their faces were filled with shock. There were some elite Dozuns among them. They broke through the empty space and attempted to approach the battlefield where Chu Bei was. However, to their disbelief, no matter how high they flew, the distance between them and the battlefield remained the same. It was neither too far nor too close. On the battlefield, Chu Bei frowned. With the Vulcan spear in his right hand, his aura continued to rise as he prepared for battle. Buzz, 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 the empty space trembled. A countless number of symbols flashed and appeared. They flickered with the light of the great Tao, appearing just like the birth and destruction of a galaxy. A dazzling light halo appeared in the distant sky. A complicated and mysterious order appeared as it flickered. A frightening fluctuation and an incomparable aura entwined together. The empty space was just like a tattered painting that trembled within the unusual light fog, emitting a crashing sound. At a closer look, those obscure rules were flowing with a chaotic light. It was extremely frightening. What exactly did that evil thought do? Gu Yuan looked at Zhu Kun beside him. His expression was incomparably ugly. He should be summoning the experts from the Great Thousand World. The two Xi ancient gods spoke. He lifted his head and looked at the halo above. His expression was similarly grave. The experts from the Great Thousand World. An existence that is even stronger than that evil thought. The brilliant halo in the distant sky finally split apart while Yao Dan, Yan Jin, and the rest were exclaiming. 100,000 feet large immortal bird flew out from the halo and hovered in the sky. The golden wings of the immortal bird were just like clouds that covered the sky. They were filled with a vast and mighty light. With a flap of its wings, thunderclouds covered the sky and the sky shattered. This was an incomparably frightening scene. Just the flapping of its wings caused the empty space to appear like it had been struck. It swiftly cracked, and the cracks spread into the distance. What magical beast is that? The feeling that it gives me is even more frightening than the overlord of the magical beasts, the ancient void dragon. Countless number of experts from the Central Plains revealed shocked faces. All of them stared at the enormous immortal bird that had appeared in the image above with disbelief. Their mouths were wide open. The expressions of the experts from the 6 clans in the battlefield instantly turned pale when the immortal bird appeared. Horror surged within their eyes. The might that the latter had unleashed was not any weaker than the 2 ancient god from earlier. Clearly, this 100,000 feet large immortal bird had already reached the Do-D class. Who is calling me? While everyone's eyes were gathered on the body of the immortal bird, an illusionary voice that was difficult to capture reverberated over the entire empty battlefield and even the Do-Chi continent. Hearing this voice, not only the experts in the battlefield, but everyone on the continent also threw their gazes to the sky in unison. As the illusionary voice sounded, a huge figure appeared above the 100,000 feet large immortal bird. It sat cross-legged and its entire body was surrounded by a layer of bright silver light. It was like a god that was patrolling the 3 realms. Who is that person? Where did he come from? Could it be the legendary Do-D? Oh my God! Is this the aura of a Do-D? On the Do-Chi continent, the experts who did not know what was going on all focused their eyes on the figure seated cross-legged on the back of the Heaven Yuan. While their faces were shocked, their eyes also contained confusion. An existence above the Do-D class. As for the experts from the 6 clans in the battlefield, each of them involuntarily inhaled a breath of cold air. Their bodies began to tense up. For such an unknown existence, even if the other party only needed to lift a finger, it would be able to crush them into dust. Disciple Han Chi greets teacher. The almost transparent evil thoughts immediately flew to the side of the Heaven Yuan and knelt down devoutly towards the huge figure on the back of the latter. Disciple, you are actually still alive. The emotions of the figure on the back of the Heaven Yuan clearly fluctuated after seeing the evil thoughts. His voice contained joy. However, his expression once again became solemn after sensing the shaky aura of the evil thoughts. He shook his head and sighed. Disciple, you should not have called teacher over. You have exhausted the last of your soul strength. Even teacher is unable to save you. Teacher, disciple does not beg you to save me. I only beg that you can help me kill him. The evil thoughts agglomerated in arm after saying this. They pointed at Chu Bei, who was holding the fire god's spear. So it is you who has cut off my disciple's path of survival. After hearing the evil thoughts, the huge figure on the back of the Heaven Yuan turned his head and looked at Chu Bei. His eyes were filled with a chill. Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun and the rest immediately shuddered when they met the eyes of the huge figure. Their bodies began to tremble involuntarily. The pressure emitted by the huge figure far surpassed the 2 ancient god by 100 or even 1,000 times. Compared to the calmness he had when facing the evil thoughts earlier, Chu Bei's expression had become solemn. He had already switched to holding the fire god's spear with both hands. Die. The huge figure on the Heaven Yuan coldly glanced at Chu Bei. His words were cold in the forest without any emotion. Immediately, a substantial and terrifying pressure surged out from his body. It was like a surging river as it descended towards Chu Bei. Everywhere it passed, space collapsed and great Tao symbols flickered. Chi. However, just as this terrifying pressure was about to envelop Chu Bei's body, Chu Bei let out a loud cry. He held the fire god's spear with both hands and stabbed out in succession. He disintegrated the all-powerful pressure. No wonder you were able to force my disciple to the point of exhausting all of his soul's strength to summon me. I did not expect that you have actually touched upon this realm. Unfortunately, it is still far from enough in front of me. The figure on the back of the Heaven Yuan sized up Chu Bei once again. Although there was some surprise in his words, he still had an arrogant expression as if he was looking down on all living beings. A mysterious and incomprehensible strange sound began to be emitted from his mouth after his calm words sounded. It was as if he was chanting scriptures. Every time he chanted a word, a huge mountain of runes would appear out of thin air and smash towards Chubei. A mountain of runes with every word. This was an extremely frightening scene. Can Boss Chu deal with this fellow? On the battlefield, Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan and the rest had extremely heavy hearts. The huge figure sat on the 100,000 feet tall green Luan as he continued to chant strange sounds. The entire space resonated with him and shook intensely. Runes jumped out from his mouth one after another and turned into huge mountains. Looking at the rune mountains above his head that carried an incomparably terrifying aura, Chu Bei's body burned with raging flames. The tip of the fire god's spear was also shrouded in flames. Chu Bei held the spear with both hands and faced the attack. This was the most difficult battle Chu Bei had ever fought since the system was activated. In the past battles, he had relied on the system to suppress his opponents. This time, even though he had used a level 12 upper grade item, he still felt powerless. If the boss only had one evil thought, this battle would have ended. However, who would have thought that this so-called boss would actually summon an old boss? Just as Chu Bei shattered the 7th rune mountain and was about to attack the 8th rune mountain, 2 rune mountains suddenly arrived at the same time. Bang! A low and dull sound was heard. Chu Bei had only destroyed 1 rune mountain before the other rune mountain smashed onto his body. Chu Bei spat out a mouthful of blood as the power in his body surged. This was also the first time he had been injured in his smooth cultivation journey. Moreover, his injuries were very serious. Boss Chu! Xiao Yan, Ziyan, Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun and the rest immediately shouted when they saw that Chu Bei was injured. Then, a few figures charged towards Chu Bei. The fastest amongst them was the Tu Shi ancient god. However, although the Tu Shi ancient god had already become a Do Di, he was still far from being able to match up against the Rune Mountain. In just one exchange, the energy from the Rune Mountain had turned him into his original body, and his aura had fallen to rock bottom. Chapter 182. Boss Chu is injured. Even he isn't a match for that fellow? If that's the case, who else in this world can stop that person? The experts from the 6 clans stared blankly at Chu Bei, who had vomited blood. After which, they looked at the huge figure with a disdainful expression on the Tianhuan's back. Their expressions were extremely solemn. The system has detected that the host is injured. The host is currently in 100% danger level. In view of the host's good performance, the protection mechanism has been activated. Reward one-time use privilege of a high-grade level 13 product. The host has descended on the Doluo continent plane and established a business empire with a reputation value of 95. The host has unlocked the right to use level 12 to 13 products. Suddenly, the system's voice sounded in Chu Bei's mind. Chu Bei was stunned. Following which, his solemn expression became relaxed once again. The host has successfully exchanged for a high-grade level 13 product. You have obtained 100% of the fire god Zhu Rong's strength. Time limit 15 minutes. The system's voice sounded once again. A mere ant. You aren't even a match for me. Yet you actually tried to block Master's attack. How laughable. You overestimate yourself. The tottering Xian Yan glanced at the Tu Shi ancient god, whose aura was extremely weak. He had already reverted to his original form. A cold snort was emitted from his mouth. His words were filled with ridicule. Rumble, 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 several rune mountains smashed towards them. Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan and the rest lifted their heads to look at the rune mountains that were getting closer and closer. They could feel the aura on them, but they could not summon any will to resist. Their eyes were filled with intense unwillingness. However, when the rune mountains were about to smash onto Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan and the rest, layers of spatial ripples appeared in the void. Within the ripples, the incomparably large rune mountains seemed to have been grabbed by an invisible force. They suddenly stopped. Following which, they began to vibrate on the spot. following which, clear cracking sounds rang out. They turned into rune fragments and disappeared into the void. "It's broken!" Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the rest were startled as they watched the rune mountains disappear. Subsequently, they subconsciously looked at Chu Bei. At some point in time, the blood at the corner of his mouth had been wiped clean. His face, which had turned pale due to the heavy blow from the rune mountains, had once again regained some color. Moreover, Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the others sensed that the other party's aura seemed to have changed once again. "He actually neutralized Master's attack! How is this possible?" The evil thoughts that could completely dissipate at any time also cast their gaze towards Chu Bei. Their words were filled with surprise and disbelief. In his eyes, his master was his belief, an invincible existence. Even in the great wide world, his master was a famous existence. He could not accept that someone on this small continent could withstand his master's attack, even if the other party might also be from the great thousand world. After destroying all the rune mountains, Chu Bei looked at the Tu Shi ancient emperor and pointed. A lump of solid flame quickly entered the Tu Shi ancient god's body. Following that, the Tu Shi ancient god's weak aura quickly recovered. Within a few seconds he returned to his human form. "Senior, your aura..." The Tu Shi ancient god was stunned as he looked at Chu Bei. He vaguely felt the urge to kneel and kowtow. As someone who was born from a heavenly flame and had swallowed 20 types of heavenly flames to become a Do Di, he was extremely sensitive to the aura of flames. Earlier, he had sensed a kind of flame aura from the other party's body that was above his own. However, that feeling earlier was not intense. At this moment, however, this feeling had already seeped deep into his limbs and bones. Accurately speaking, the flame aura that the other party gave him was not a real flame. Instead, it was a flame that could command all flames. It was the ruler of all flames. "I have already undone the first seal. All of you can just stay by the side and watch. Leave the rest to me." Chu Bei placed his hands behind his back. His eyes swept over the Tu Shi ancient god, Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others before he stepped forward. A bright and dazzling purple-red light surged wherever he passed. In the blink of an eye, Chu Bei arrived in the sky above the huge figure. He faced it head-on. His clothes danced with the wind and his back appeared just like an unrivaled god. "Seal? So Boss Chu's previous strength was already sealed. He has only undone the first seal now. In that case, how many seals has he added on himself?" Gu Yuan, Zhu Kun, and the others faced each other. They were extremely shocked and their hearts were unable to calm down. "Who exactly are you?" The huge figure was still seated on the green lawn in the battlefield. However, the gaze that it used to look at Chu Bei had become a little more serious after Chu Bei had destroyed the symbol mountain. Chu Bei did not reply. All he did was smile. "Forget it. Regardless of where you came from or what kind of background you have, you will have to pay the price for attacking my disciple." The huge figure stood up from the green lawn after the dense cold voice sounded. Its appearance, which was originally covered by the turbid aura, had become even more illusory. It was difficult to see through it. Screech, the heavenly Luan under the huge figure's feet appeared to have received an order. It emitted a screech and lightning interweaved on its golden wings. A cold wind churned intensely. After which, one could only see its golden wings shake. All the essence of the continuous mountain range below gathered and entered its wings. It charged into its mouth and nose. In an instant, the aura of the heavenly Luan soared to an incomparably frightening level. However, its body was the exact opposite. It continued to shrink and finally transformed into a golden longsword that was emitting a bright and dazzling light. This longsword was extremely strange. A pair of golden wings had actually extended from the body of the sword and emitted an incomparably holy aura. Swoosh! The golden longsword flickered and transformed into a ray of light that penetrated the sky and headed straight for Chu Bei's forehead. The world shook because of this sword. At this moment, Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the others finally understood just how frightening this green Luan was. Even they had completely stopped circulating the do-chi within their bodies under the might of this golden long sword. It was as though they had suddenly become ordinary people. The most frightening thing was that they seemed to have lost their senses and were unable to move for a time. In their sight, there was only the world-destroying divine sword in the distant sky and Boss Chu, who was still calm and composed even though he was about to be penetrated. Clang! Chu Bei casually lifted his right hand just as the peerless divine sword was about to penetrate his forehead. 2 fingers were extended. After which, those 2 fingers gently pinched the peerless divine sword in front of a couple of shocked gazes. The sharp aura of the divine sword that could kill anyone it met also came to a sudden halt. At the same time, the binding force from the divine sword on Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan and the others disappeared and they once again regained their freedom. Such a frightening sword was actually pinched by 2 fingers. Moreover, from the looks of it, Boss Chu appears to be very casual. It seems like he did not use any strength. Boss Chu is mighty. The experts from the 6 clans swallowed when they saw this scene. Their heated eyes were fixed on Chu Bei's body. Their eyes were filled with worship. Crack! A clear cracking sound drifted over the battlefield and spread into the distance. In the next moment, continuous miserable wails resounded in everyone's ears. They were filled with intense pain. When they looked over, they saw that the golden sword had been broken into 2 by Chu Bei's 2 fingers. It had once again transformed into the Sky Luan's body. However, the Sky Luan had been split into 2 at this moment. Golden blood sprayed across the sky like a long river. It was wailing incessantly. It was enduring unbearable pain, and its wails caused one to feel pity for it. "Stop!" the huge figure immediately shouted. At the same time, it extended a large jade white hand. It was sparkling and translucent like a jade stone and slapped towards Chu Bei. This palm flowed with the dense aura of the great Tao, and it was all-powerful. However, even though the huge figure had attacked at the first possible moment, it was still too late. Chu Bei used his palm as a blade and slashed down. An enormous blade formed from blazing flames tore through space. Various powerful flame creatures could be seen everywhere it passed. The flaming blade flashed past the 2 halves of the Sky Luan's body. In an instant, the Sky Luan's wails disappeared into the sky. The 2 halves of its body also disappeared along with it. Boom! In the end, the flaming blade merged with the huge figure's palm and shattered the sky. Master's mount has been killed. Looking at the Sky Luan that had been destroyed, the evil thought was like a bolt from the blue. His expression was numb. "You killed my mount. I won't let you enter the cycle of reincarnation." The huge figure's cold gaze locked onto Chu Bei. He shouted loudly, and his voice was filled with fierce, killing intent. At this moment, the misty fog around the huge figure dissipated, revealing his true appearance. His shocking appearance was no more than 26 or 27 years old. He was extremely handsome and full of vitality. This was different from the solemn, simple, and lethargic appearance that everyone had imagined. It overturned everyone's guesses. Die! With his mount killed, the huge figure was burning with anger. He used his true strength, and a vast and surging power pierced through the sky. As the cold syllable fell, a huge axe appeared in the huge figure's hand. The axe blade was surrounded by a strange black light. With just one look, anyone below the Emperor realm would lose their mind. The huge figure took a step forward and swung the axe, slashing diagonally at Chu Bei. Immediately, the void split open, and a pitch-black rainbow traversed across the sky, causing one's heart to palpitate. "Want to kill me? You are far from qualified." Facing the terrifying attack, Chu Bei's face did not have the slightest fear, and was calm and composed. As his indifferent voice fell, his body suddenly enlarged, standing indomitable, and gradually became as tall as the sky. At this moment, the flame power in Chu Bei's body was circulating crazily. Various colored flames rippled in the void around him, and quietly hung around him. It gave people an indescribable pressure, and all living beings had to look up to him. Behind him, there was a raging sea of fire. Various fire-type living beings could be seen jumping in the sea of fire, including the 22 types of heavenly flames on the Do-Chi continent other than the Tu-Shi ancient god. Chu Bei also made his move. With a thrust of his spear, the entire sky of the battlefield cracked, and was divided into 4 areas. The elites of the 6 clans were stunned. They looked at the center of the battlefield in a daze, waiting for the collision of the 2 supreme attacks. However, the shocking confrontation that they expected did not appear, and there was not even an explosion. Almost in an instant, Chu Bei's powerful stab annihilated the huge figure's axe blade as easily as crushing dry weeds. The huge axe shattered, and the huge figure's pupils suddenly shrank, and his body staggered backward. Obviously, this huge axe was connected to his origin. When the axe was destroyed, he also suffered a backlash. Chapter 183. On the battlefield, the huge figure, who had suffered a backlash from the huge axe, had yet to stabilize his body when the figure in his sight had already approached him. The long spear in the other party's hand was once again pierced forward. A couple of huge fire dragons surged from the tip of the spear and shot towards him. Bang! In an instant, the sky was filled with a red glow. It was as though thousands of suns had exploded at the same time. Zhu Kuan, Gu Yuan, Yao Dan and the rest, as well as all the spectators on the continent, who had lifted their heads to look at the sky, shut their eyes at the same time. They were unable to endure this glaring light. There will come a day when I will definitely kill you! The huge figure's roar, which was filled with a dense murderous intent, was emitted from within the glaring fire glow. It first spread across the entire battlefield before reverberating in every corner of the Do-Chi continent. The roar gradually disappeared. The sky of the battlefield was deathly silent. That person has disappeared. The battle is over. Is that fellow dead or has he fled? Regardless, we have escaped this calamity. The flames disappeared. The experts from the 6 clans looked at the sky in an uncertain manner. The frightening existence from the great thousand world had disappeared. Only a young man wearing a long robe and holding a long spear remained. He stepped on the empty space and slowly descended in a relaxed manner. The empty space, which had originally collapsed due to the battle, was being repaired by an invisible spatial strength at this moment. Boss Chu! Gu Yuan, Zhu Kuan and the rest immediately stepped forward. Their faces were filled with joy. Chu Bei's eyes swept over Gu Yuan and the rest. He nodded in response before waving the fire god's spear. Immediately, the vision of Gu Yuan, Zhu Kuan and the rest changed. In an instant they had returned to the ancient god cave. After which, Chu Bei looked at Xian Yan. No, impossible! At this moment, Xian Yan was still immersed in the scene of the huge figure being defeated as he muttered to himself. When he sensed Chu Bei's gaze, his expression once again became ferocious. Teacher will definitely find you again! Chu Bei shook his head. He sighed and swung his spear. Qi La! Xian Yan turned into nothingness. You can also leave after leaving behind the inheritance. After dealing with Xian Yan, Chu Bei's eyes landed on the Tu-Shi ancient god. Thank you, Senior. The Tu-Shi ancient emperor once again bowed towards Chu Bei. Then, his gaze swept past Yao Dan, Gu Yuan, and the others. With a wave of his hand, several balls of light appeared. My inheritance is all here. Take what you need. As for where you can go in the end, that will depend on your luck. As the aged voice rang out, the Tu-Shi ancient emperor looked up into the void. Rumble. The void rumbled and a pitch-black passageway that seemed to have no end appeared beneath the Tu-Shi ancient emperor's feet. Boss Chu, we'll meet again if fate wills it. The Tu-Shi ancient god cupped his fists together towards Chu Bei. After which, he looked at Zhu Kuan and Gu Yuan and said, I will go and scout the path for you guys first. I will wait for you there. After saying that, Tu-Shi ancient emperor took a step forward and entered the pitch-black void passageway. After the great battle in the ancient god cave, Chu Bei's name had spread throughout the Do-Chi continent. In addition to the 6 ancient clans and the various large factions in the Central Plains spreading the news, the people on the continent gradually came to know that although there were no Do-di on the continent, there was an existence that surpassed the Do-di level. As for Chu Bei, his cultivation had also advanced to 9 stars Do-shing level through the exchange of will points. However, just as he was about to break through to the Do-di level, he suddenly realized that he was unable to continue the exchange. If he wanted to continue, he would need to unlock the level 11 commodity authority. If he wanted to unlock the level 11 commodity authority, he would need to complete the mission issued by the system. After that, Chu Bei lived a carefree and happy life in the Do-chi continent. One day, 1 year later, many famous existences on the continent had gathered at the central square of Tianhuang City. Among these people, there was the clan leader of the Gu clan, Gu Yuan, the clan leader of the Yao clan, Yao Dan, the clan leader of the Lei clan, Lei Ying, and even the ancient void dragon's dragon emperor Zhu Kun had rushed over. "Boss, are you really not going to bring us along?" Qing Lin and the little doctor's eyes were filled with tears of reluctance. After a year of Chu Bei's training, both of their cultivations had advanced to the Do-shing level. "I'm only going out to travel for a while. I'll be back soon." Chu Bei extended his hands and wiped away their tears. After that, Chu Bei's eyes swept across Zhu Kun, Gu Yuan, and the others. "Thank you for coming to send me off." After bidding farewell to everyone, Chu Bei's divine sense moved. Rumble suddenly, a rumbling sound was heard. After that, the space in front of Chu Bei became distorted. After that, a blue intersecting wheel slowly appeared. The words planar space-time wheel were especially conspicuous at the top of the wheel. Below it were the words Doloa continent plane, which were slightly smaller. At a closer look, there was an azure path that was woven by the river of time within the wheel. Chu Bei seemed to be prepared as he looked at the wheel of time that had appeared. He took a step forward and stepped into the wheel of time. "What is that thing in front of Boss Chu?" "I don't know. I don't dare to ask. Where does that azure path lead to?" Could it be the same place as the Tu-Shi ancient emperor went to? Is it the Great Thousand World? Gu Yuan, Yao Dan, and the others looked at each other as they looked at the azure wheel above the mansion and the path that led to an unknown place within the wheel. They all made their guesses. The moment Chu Bei stepped into the wheel of time, he suddenly realized that the majestic Doji power in his body seemed to have been shackled, and he was actually unable to use it. Moreover, he didn't appear in the Doluo continent in an instant. He seemed to be swimming in a wonderful world woven by the river of time, and he drifted forward without day or night. Doluo continent. A world that belonged to martial spirits. There was no magic or dochi here, but there were miraculous martial spirits. Everyone on the continent would awaken their martial spirits in the martial spirit hall when they were 6 years old. According to the types, there were animals, plants, and artifacts. Awakened martial spirits could assist people in their daily lives, and some of the more outstanding martial spirits could even be used to cultivate and fight. Martial spirits that could be used to cultivate and fight created a profession, which was also the strongest and most glorious profession on the Doluo continent. Soul Master. In the southwest of the Heaven Do Empire, there was a province called the Fastno Province. There was a village in the province called the Holy Soul Village. The reason why it was called the Holy Soul Village was because a soul sage had once walked out of this place 100 years ago. This was also the eternal pride of the people of the Holy Soul Village. Compared to the Do-Chi continent, the Doluo continent also had a clear division of realms. In the Doluo continent, the foundation of cultivators was martial soul force. According to the strength of martial soul force, it was divided into 10 realms, and each realm corresponded to a title. Every title was divided into 10 levels. Those who had just awakened their martial spirits were called soul scholars. After cultivating, when one's soul power reached the 11th rank, they would enter the next title, which was Soul Master. The 10 titles were Soul Scholar, Soul Master, Soul Grand Master, Soul Elder, Soul Ancestor, Soul King, Soul Emperor, Soul Sage, Soul Doluo, and titled Doluo. This was where the name of the Doluo continent came from. Of course, in the Doluo continent's cultivation system, if one wanted to advance from one title to the next, not only did their martial soul force have to reach the peak of the previous title, they also needed to obtain a soul ring. Without a soul ring, no matter how hard they cultivated, they couldn't enter the next title. As a result, when a cultivator's martial soul force reached the peak of their current realm, they had to obtain the next soul ring and enter the next realm before they could continue cultivating. On this day, the village was just like any other day. The adults were working in the fields, and a group of children were playing by the side of a pond. But right at this moment, a pitch-black crack appeared 100 meters above the pond. An azure-clothed figure fell through the crack. Bang! The figure fell heavily into the water. First, there was a low and clear sound of collision, followed by the sound of water splashing in all directions. Hearing this, the children playing by the pond immediately looked towards the center of the pond. Someone fell into the water! And it's an old man! What do we do? Why did he fall into the water? He seems to be dead. No, I'll call the adults over. Could he be a transformed water ghost? Seeing the figure in the water, the group of children immediately screamed. Fear filled their faces. Some of the children had already run to the fields to seek help from the adults. Some of the children were stunned where they were, at a loss. Some of the children even retreated in fear, as if they really thought that the figure in the water was transformed from a fruit. If one were to talk about the most unusual behavior, it would be none other than the fattest one among the group of children. He could be seen hugging a large dried tree stump, and then with a splash, he jumped into the water. Go Dan, are you crazy? You don't know how to swim at all. Come back. That person must be a transformed water ghost. If you go over, he'll eat you. Seeing the fat boy carrying the withered tree stump and paddling towards the floating figure in the center of the pond without hesitation, the children on the shore hurriedly shouted. Their shouts were filled with anxiety. The figure that fell from the sky into the pond was Chu Bei. However, the current Chu Bei didn't have the mood to look at his surroundings. He was staring at his own reflection in the water. As he looked, he was stunned. The current him was no longer the young and handsome him of the past. This was an old man with a face full of wrinkles and almost no white hair left. He was around 80 to 90 years old. In his shock, Chu Bei immediately circulated the energy in his body, only to find that there was no fighting power left in his body. It was as if he had really become an ordinary old man. He used his divine sense to check himself. Fortunately, the system was still there. When he saw the kind notifications on the system, Chu Bei's tense body relaxed a little. His heavy heart also relaxed a little. He let out a long sigh. Due to the different cultivation systems of the two continents, the system was currently converting his cultivation from the Do-Chi continent to that of the Doluo continent. Current conversion progress 0%. As for his current appearance of an old man, it was randomly changed when he went through the space-time wheel. It was like reincarnation. Unfortunately, he was randomly changed into an old man. However, as his cultivation recovered, he could gradually return to his original handsome appearance. In other words, this space-time wheel didn't have to be an old man. It could also be a baby or even a beast with no cultivation. Other than the fact that cultivation had to be converted, the willpower of the two continents couldn't be used equally. For example, when he used the willpower he obtained from the Do-Chi continent to exchange for a rank 8 item, he only needed 100,000 willpower. However, in the Doluo continent, if he used the willpower he obtained from the Do-Chi continent to exchange for a rank 8 item, he would need 1 million willpower. It was 10 times more. As for a rank 9 item, he would need 2 million willpower. As for a rank 10 item, he would need 4 million willpower. The only small advantage was that the treasures obtained from the Do-Chi continent and the Doluo continent could not only be used by himself, but could also be given to others to use. Looking at the remaining willpower, he now had 12 million willpower. Chu Bei was a little regretful, but he was also a little relieved. He regretted that he didn't continue to sell more items after his cultivation reached the peak of the 9 stars Doxing stage and earned more willpower. He was also relieved that he didn't rush to the Doloa continent when his willpower was depleted. Although it was extremely extravagant to use the Do-Chi continent's willpower to spend on the Doloa continent, at least he had some trump cards to protect himself. Just as Chu Bei was silently cursing the system for not informing him of these changes in advance, in his line of sight, he saw a little chubby boy with one hand hugging a withered tree stump and the other paddling in the water, constantly approaching him. "Grandfather, it's great that you're fine." Seeing Chu Bei staring at him, the fat boy exclaimed in surprise and paddled even harder. Hearing the fat boy call him grandfather, Chu Bei couldn't help but twitch the corner of his mouth. However, when he saw the pure kindness in the fat boy's eyes, a warm current surged in his heart. Although he would have been fine if the fat boy hadn't appeared. Seeing that there was a little fellow who didn't know how to swim, who didn't fear death and came to save him, he felt an indescribable joy. Under the fat boy's gentle tug, Chu Bei placed one hand on the tree stump. After that, the fat boy turned around and struggled to swim towards the shore. "That old grandfather didn't die. Good and really saved him. Don't go over. He might really be a water ghost. I don't think I've seen him before. He's not from our village." The children on the shore didn't dare to approach even when they saw the fat boy helping Chu Bei up. Ta ta ta! Not long after, the children who had run to the farm first ran back. Behind them were a few adults who had rushed over after hearing the news. "Good and did you save this old man?" A middle-aged woman in linen clothes looked at the fat boy in astonishment. "I was afraid that something would happen to grandfather, so I went over." The fat boy nodded foolishly. "You don't know how to swim. Do you know how dangerous it is?" After the woman in linen clothes scolded the fat boy, she looked at Chu Bei and asked, "Old man, how did you end up in our holy soul village and fall into the water?" Chu Bei's sunken eyes lit up as he asked in a hoarse voice, "Where do you think this is?" "Old man, you don't even know where this is? You didn't get lost, did you?" The woman in linen clothes continued, "This is the holy soul village." "Little guy, where are you going at this hour? Take me with you. I'm a little scared to be alone in this room." Chu Bei straightened his clothes and got up from the bed with a curious look on his face. Compared to the day before when he had just arrived on the Dolo continent, he felt that his strength had increased a lot. Although he still looked like an old man, it should not be a problem to kill a dog with one punch. At this moment, battle through the heavens cultivation conversion progress had changed from 0 to 1. Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Wang Fan hesitated for a moment and said, "Grandpa, I'll help you." With Wang Fan's help, Chu Bei quickly arrived at a mountain to the north of the village. "Grandpa, let's sit here. It'll be louder if we go any further." Wang Fan was like a thief. He stopped in front of a stone and helped Chu Bei slowly sit down on the stone. There was an open area 100 meters in front of them, and there was a thin boy there. The boy was only 5 or 6 years old. Perhaps because he often endured the warmth of the sun, his skin was a healthy wheat color. His short black hair looked very neat. Although his clothes were simple, they were clean. Because he was too focused, or because Wang Fan and Chu Bei were too careful, the boy did not notice the two people who had arrived. The boy's legs were in a standard horse stance. His eyes were staring at the gradually brightening white in the east. He slowly inhaled through his nose and slowly exhaled from his mouth. The boy inhaled and exhaled regularly, repeating the cycle. If one looked carefully, they would find that the boy's eyes were shining with a faint layer of purple. Although this purple didn't last long and quietly disappeared, when it existed, it was so clear. "He is the one who is most likely to become a soul master among our peers." Wang Fan stared at the boy who was concentrating on cultivation 100 meters away, his eyes full of envy. "Do you really want to be strong?" Chu Bei looked at Wang Fan calmly. "Of course. Who doesn't want to be a soul master and be respected by others?" Wang Fan's chubby little face was full of yearning for a soul master. As he spoke, he lowered his head. But I already participated in the awakening ceremony last year. My martial soul is only a wooden stick, and I have no soul power. I'm destined to not be a soul master. Speaking of this, Wang Fan opened his right palm, revealing an ordinary-looking wooden stick in his palm. Looking at the dejected Wang Fan, Chu Bei stretched out his hand and patted the latter's shoulder. Not only can I make you a soul master, I can also make you one of the strongest people on this continent. But when you really stand at the top of this continent, I hope you will always maintain a kind heart. As Chu Bei spoke with a smile, he waved his right hand and a dazzling ball of light appeared out of thin air from his palm. In the ball of light was the phantom of a monster that was somewhat similar to a lion. Its whole body was covered in black scales, and the scales flickered with a cold light that made people shiver. In addition, it also had a pair of wings that seemed to be cast from steel. And that strange black horn. The horn was entwined with golden patterns that spread all the way to its neck, back, and tail. At first glance, its body seemed to be covered in a layer of gold and black armor. The most astonishing thing was its pair of dark golden eyes, which were like the eyes of a god, faintly carrying a power that looked down on the world. Grandpa, you are... Seeing Chu Bei's move, Wang Fan was stunned and stared at Chu Bei in astonishment. He thought that the person he saved from the pond was just an ordinary old man, but judging from the ball of light floating in his palm, he was obviously not an ordinary old man. Little guy, this is an opportunity I'm giving you. Consider it your reward for saving me yesterday. Before Wang Fan could recover from his shock, Chu Bei waved his right hand, and the ball of light in his palm flew into Wang Fan's forehead. The next moment, Wang Fan only felt a burst of heat in his body, and then his limbs and bones were filled with a warm current. A magical power wandered all over his body. In the end, under his horrified gaze, this power condensed in his palm and instantly shattered his martial spirit wooden stick and replaced it. This is your new martial soul, it's called the Golden Horn Beast. As your strength increases, you'll find that this martial soul is far more powerful than you think. Chu Bei pointed at Wang Fan's forehead again, and relevant information about the Golden Horn Beast poured into the latter's mind. Because it was not the Golden Horn Beast of the real world, but a martial soul with growth potential, it was classified as a level 9 commodity. The reason why Chu Bei was willing to spend 2 million willpower points was, 1. Because this fat boy was not afraid of death, and 2. Because he sympathized with his background. It could be considered fate. Grandpa, thank you! Wang Fan knelt on the ground and kowtowed heavily to Chu Bei. Side mission activated. Host accepts 10 level 1 agents in the Doluo continent. If a level 1 agent is on the system's recommended list, you will be rewarded with willpower points and can speed up the conversion process. Just as Chu Bei lifted Wang Fan, the system's voice rang in his mind. Chu Bei was stunned at first, and then looked at the system's list. The names on the list were all core characters in the original work. Chu Bei looked at Wang Fan. Although he was not on the recommended list, he still decided to give him a spot. Who asked him to like this fat boy called Gooden? Grandpa, why are you smiling? The fat boy was puzzled. After a while, I'll consider giving you another opportunity. Chu Bei pinched Wang Fan's chubby face. After saying this, he continued to look at the boy who was still cultivating 100 meters away. The moment he saw the boy, he knew who he was. It was the main character of the Doluo continent, Tang San. Of course, he was also one of the recommended level 1 agents on the system's list. Compared to the willpower points, what he was more eager to do now was to quickly convert his cultivation base to success. Chu Bei walked towards Tang San. Why can't I break through the bottleneck of the first level? It's already been 3 months, what's the problem? At this moment, little Tang San suddenly sat cross-legged on the ground and sighed dejectedly, revealing a helpless expression that should never appear on someone his age. Are you confused? Because the world you're in now is different from your original world. If you want to cultivate the mysterious heaven method to the second level, you must first have a soul ring. Just as Tang San was puzzled, a voice suddenly sounded from behind him, causing him to tremble in fright and crawl up from the ground. Brother Gooden! Tang San's gaze fell on the familiar Wang Fan. Soon, Tang San seemed to have thought of something, and his gaze quickly fell on Chu Bei. His brows were tightly knitted, and his face was full of vigilance. Who are you? Although Tang San pretended to be calm on the surface, his heart was in turmoil. Just now, the other party had actually said this world and your original world, and the 3 words. Mysterious heaven method. Whether it was the former or the latter, they were all secrets buried deep in his heart. Even his father, who was closest to him, did not know. Logically speaking, no one in this world should know his secrets, because he had transmigrated and did not belong to this world. Chapter 185. You were also called Tang San in your previous life, but you only lived to the age of 29. You were abandoned by your parents when you were just born. Tang Lan, an outer sect elder, took pity on you and brought you back to the Tang sect. The Tang sect was divided into inner and outer sects when it was established. The outer sect was made up of disciples with different surnames or were given the surname Tang, while the inner sect was made up of direct descendants of the Tang sect. You entered the Tang sect not long after you were born, and you were ranked 3rd among the outer sect disciples, so the outer sect disciples like to call you 3rd young master. Of course, in the mouths of the inner sect disciples, it became Tang San. You showed extraordinary talent in using the Tang sect's hidden weapons from a young age, and because of your passion, you broke the Tang sect's rules. You snuck into the inner sect's hidden scripture pavilion and secretly learned the Tang sect's secret techniques. In the end, you created the number 1 hidden weapon of the Tang sect that had been lost for 200 years, the Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus. Unfortunately, you were still unable to cross the hurdle in your heart. After you gave the completed Buddha's Fury Tang Lotus to the Tang sect master, you committed suicide to atone for your sins and jumped off the cliff. As Chu Bei talked about Tang San's past life, he walked towards Tang San at a leisurely pace. His calm and composed demeanor, coupled with the appearance of an old man, gave people the feeling that he was an expert. How do you know all this? Who are you? Tang San took a step back. He looked at Chu Bei with a wary gaze, and there was a hint of fear in his expression. This fear came from the fact that the old man in front of him knew everything about him, but he did not know anything about the other party's background. Other than that, the most fundamental reason was that he had not grown up yet. Right now, he was just a child. If this mysterious old man of unknown origin wanted to make a move on him, he would not be able to resist at all. Clearly, Tang San had already taken Chu Bei to be that kind of expert with terrifying cultivation. Little fellow, don't be nervous. Chu Bei smiled at Tang San and tidied his clothes. He said calmly, I am a merchant. On the day you transmigrated, I just finished a business deal in your original world. Out of boredom, I followed you to this Doloa continent, and only found you today. Merchant? After listening to Chu Bei's words, Tang San's frown deepened, and the confusion in his eyes deepened. Then why are you looking for me? Since I've come to this continent, as a merchant, I naturally have to create a huge and influential business empire. With a smile on his face, Chu Bei continued, As for you, I feel that fate has brought us together. I want you to become my right-hand man and build this business empire with me. As you can see, I'm still young. Why don't we put this matter aside for now? After he finished speaking, Tang San turned around and ran towards the foot of the mountain. From time to time, he would turn around to look at Chu Bei, his eyes filled with suspicion and fear. Grandfather, what did you say to Tang San just now? I don't understand at all. Wang Fan looked at Chu Bei in confusion. Also, why is he so afraid of you? Chu Bei rubbed Wang Fan's head and said, You can ask Tang San about this. In the future you will cultivate with Tang San every day. When you feel that you are stronger than him, remember to challenge him. As for grandfather, I will leave for a while. Yes, I will. Wang Fan nodded heavily. The reason why Chu Bei chose to leave was firstly because the Holy Spirit village was too poor. Secondly, he wanted to find another agent on the list to speed up the transformation of his cultivation. Only when his cultivation increased would the limit of his daily sales increase, and he would be able to unlock the level 11 product authorization faster. After checking the 10 level 1 agent positions on the list marked on the system map, Chu Bei prioritized the person closest to Tang San. 2 days later, Chu Bei came to the soul hunting forest northeast of Nodding City. This was the soul beast forest that belonged to the Empire. Only soul masters with a warrant from the Martial Spirit Hall could enter to hunt soul beasts. Outside the forest, there was a huge steel fence with sharp spikes at the top of the fence. Obviously, this sturdy steel fence was used to prevent outsiders from sneaking in. Through the fence, one could faintly see groups of soldiers patrolling the fence from time to time. Even outside the fence, there were some soldiers patrolling seriously. These soldiers were all wearing fine iron armor and holding long spears, giving off an austere feeling. The reason why Chu Bei came here was naturally because one of the agents on the system list was here. Don't hit my grandfather, please let him go. This is our first time here, we won't dare to do it again. Just when Chu Bei saw that the red dot on the map almost overlapped with his position and was about to search for it, a group of soldiers came out from the gate, holding an old man and a young boy. The old man was about 60 or 70 years old. His hair was white and his body was stooped. At the moment, his clothes were tattered and thin and long bloodstains were clearly visible. They were caused by a whip. Beside the old man, there was a little boy of 8 or 9 years old. The little boy was also dressed simply in a flaxen coat. He was crying and mumbling, and his eyes were filled with fear. Officers, please do me a favor. I will go with you, but Oscar is still a child. He doesn't know anything. I brought him here by force. I beg you to let him go. The old man completely ignored the injuries on his body and knelt in front of the soldiers with a plop. He kept kowtowing, and blood flowed from his forehead. Found him. Hearing the old man's name, Chu Bei glanced at the little boy. The corners of his mouth curled up, revealing an indescribable smile. Old thing, now you know how to beg for mercy? No matter what, you are still a rank 18 soul master. Since you know the consequences, why are you still holding on to a fluke? We have to catch hundreds of people like you every day. If we let you go because of your age, won't there be more and more people breaking the law in the future? A soldier sneered. As he spoke, he kicked the old man and waved the long whip in his hand. But just as the long whip in the soldier's hand was about to land on the old man, a figure strangely appeared in front of the soldier out of thin air. At the same time, a tyrannical force swept out. Suddenly, the soldiers surrounding the old man and the little boy shot out like cannonballs against the iron fence outside the forest. Following that, the soldiers began to wail in agony. Damn it! Who are you? How dare you attack us? Do you want to die? Old man who doesn't know his place, capture him! A group of soldiers climbed up from the iron fence with difficulty. They endured the pain on their bodies and surrounded Chu Bei. One by one, they aimed the long spears in their hands at Chu Bei's head. Go! Following the command of the leader, the group of soldiers rushed forward at the same time, their long spears aimed at Chu Bei. Chu Bei glanced indifferently at the soldiers around him. There was no trace of panic on his face. As soon as he shouted, the air instantly froze. In the next moment, with Chu Bei as the center, a ripple appeared in the air. Wherever the ripple passed, the soldiers fell to the ground with a loud bang. These soldiers' eyes were empty, their bodies were stiff, and their mouths were wide open as if they were frightened. Looking at the scene before them, the little boy and the old man next to him, who were covered in scars, narrowed their eyes. They looked at Chu Bei with shock and fear in their eyes. Thank you for your help. It was a long while later that the old man, whose body was covered in scars, finally recovered from his shock. He pulled the little boy and knelt in front of Chu Bei in an incomparably uneasy manner. He repeatedly thanked Chu Bei, and his eyes were filled with gratitude. Get up! Chubei lifted the old man and the boy in front of him. Sir, they are all people of the Empire. You shouldn't do it for us. The old man got up, and his grateful eyes were full of worry. Who else here besides you two saw it? Even if someone else saw it, so what? Chubei glanced at the soldiers on the ground and said with a smile. The means he just used to deal with this group of soldiers was a quarter of an hour of Haushiko Haki that he exchanged for willpower points. Of course, this is also the cheapest Haushiko Haki he chose. After all, before his cultivation, he has to save his willpower points. But even so, it is more than enough to deal with these miscellaneous soldiers. Then, sir, let's get out of here. With that, the old man covered in scars was about to pull the boy away. You should be here to hunt soul beasts. Did you get the soul rings? The old man pulled the little boy and just took 2 steps. Chubei's calm voice sounded. The old man shook his head, and his voice was full of regret. Sir, we were discovered before we even saw the soul beasts. We really shouldn't have taken the risk. It's fine if I'm an old man, but I almost ruined Oscar's future. As his voice fell, the old man held the little boy in his arms, and his wrinkled hands kept stroking the little boy's head. Since you haven't gotten the soul rings, why leave? Come in with me, Chubei said faintly. Sir, but this is the Empire's private forest. We are not qualified to go in. The old man looked at the little boy, then looked at Chubei, and fell into hesitation. I'm here. Don't worry, follow me. As his voice fell, Chubei stepped through the door. Hearing Chubei's words and thinking of the other party's previous methods, the old man was stunned for a moment before making a decision. He pulled the boy and followed Chubei. Inside the soul-hunting forest, the air was very fresh, and people couldn't help but feel refreshed. My lord, who are you? The old man who was covered in scars asked curiously as he followed behind Chubei. A merchant, Chubei replied. Ah? Hearing Chubei's answer, the old man was astonished, and his face was full of disbelief. Obviously, he didn't expect that the person in front of him, who looked older than him, was also a merchant. Then what do you sell? I saw you make a move just now, and your strength is tyrannical. Are you a soul grandmaster? The old man continued to probe. Chubei smiled and didn't answer. Sensing that Chubei wasn't willing to say more, the old man didn't dare to ask any more. Oscar, summon your sausage martial soul for me to see. Chubei suddenly stopped and looked at the little boy. Hearing this, the little boy and the old man were shocked at the same time. Their mouths were wide open, and their faces were full of shock. Chapter 186. Grandpa Expert, how did you know my martial soul is a sausage? As Chubei still looked like an old man, little Oscar naturally addressed Chubei as Grandpa. When Oscar asked the question in his heart, the old man covered in scars also looked at Chubei with a puzzled expression. The martial soul was the foundation of every soul master. Under normal circumstances, if a soul master did not reveal it himself, it would be very difficult for outsiders to know what his martial soul was. It was also because of this that the old man revealed a shocked expression when Chubei said that Oscar's martial soul was a sausage. Just treat it as my special method. The corners of Chubei's mouth curled into a smile. He couldn't possibly tell her that he had read a book called The Loa Continent. Grandpa Expert, my martial soul is an auxiliary type. Oscar looked at Chubei and opened his right hand, revealing a red sausage in his palm. From the direction of development of martial souls, they could be divided into assault type, agility type, control type, auxiliary type, etc. Oscar's martial soul was a food type auxiliary type martial soul. This child awakened with full soul power. It's a pity that he followed me. The old man sighed with regret. Don't worry, this little guy is so talented. He won't be buried, Chubei said indifferently. The probability of having an innate full soul power was about 1 in a million, and auxiliary type innate full soul power was even rarer. In terms of talent, this Oscar was definitely one of the best in Shrek's 7 monsters. Although Tang San also had innate full soul power, it was because he had cultivated the mysterious heaven techniques since he was young. According to the normal development of the plot, this Oscar would catch the eye of Shrek Academy's Dean Flender and become a member of Shrek's 7 monsters until he obtained the inheritance of the culinary god. However, since the system had expressed that it wanted Oscar to be a first-class agent, Flender naturally had nothing to do with it. As Chu Bei's group of 3 went deeper into the forest, there were movements in the surrounding forest. Shio! An air-piercing sound was heard. They saw a white figure jump out from behind a huge tree in the east, and appear in the line of sight of Chu Bei and the other 2 people. "This is a healing rabbit! And it's 100-year-old!" Seeing the appearance of the white figure, the scarred old man's face was instantly filled with excitement. This was a rabbit with white fur all over its body. Unlike ordinary rabbits, this white rabbit had 10 round curly hairs above its ears, indicating that it had lived for 100 years. "Oscar, your soul ring has been found!" The old man took Oscar's small hand and said excitedly. "In a while, Grandpa will subdue it. Seize the opportunity to kill it, do you hear me?" "Yes." Little Oscar's face was also filled with excitement. "This soul ring should be yours, Grandpa expert, but they are from the royal family." Oscar still didn't dare to pick up the dagger. He only wiped his snot and stopped his tears. Just a mere royal family. Chu Bei looked down at Oscar and patted his shoulder. "You must believe that one day you will stand at the peak of this continent. On the path of cultivation, you need to have a fearless heart. Old man, I think you are tired of living." A golden-scaled guard shouted angrily and ran in front of Chu Bei. He didn't seem to care that Chu Bei was an old man in his 80s or 90s. He pulled out a large knife from his waist and slashed towards Chu Bei's head. "Senior Grandpa, be careful." Looking at the shiny knife, Oscar screamed in horror. He stretched out his hands and pushed Chu Bei with all his might, as if he wanted to push the ladder away. However, no matter how hard Oscar tried, the ladder was like a 10,000-ton mountain, not moving an inch. The golden-scaled guard's knife came closer and closer, flashing with a cold light. Oscar was so anxious that his tears flowed down again. But just as the golden-scaled guard's knife was about to land on Chu Bei's body, a majestic energy storm burst out from Chu Bei's body. Under this energy storm, with a kacha sound, the golden-scaled guard's broadswords were shattered. Following that, there was a loud explosion as the golden-scaled guard exploded. In front of Chu Bei, there seemed to be a repulsive force. The flying flesh and blood fell in front of the middle-aged man. Ah! Looking at the flesh and blood on the ground, the little girl was so frightened that she quickly retreated and screamed. "Sir, you killed the golden-scaled guard." Seeing this scene, the old man was at a loss. "Don't kill him? Don't tell me you want him to kill me?" Chu Bei glanced at the old man indifferently. Hearing Chu Bei's words, the old man was stunned and didn't know how to respond. "Uncle Zhou, he killed a golden-scaled guard. I want you to kill him and make him follow me." The little girl quickly ran behind the middle-aged man. When she looked at Chu Bei again, the fear on her face disappeared and was replaced by hatred. So young, but so vicious and merciless. Chu Bei glanced at the little girl and said in a cold voice. When the middle-aged man heard the little girl's words, he bowed respectfully and said, "I'll listen to young Mississippi." After saying that, the middle-aged man looked at Chu Bei again. His eyes focused and his body suddenly expanded. His originally strong and developed muscles suddenly doubled in size. Then, a wolf-shaped beast with horns appeared around his body. Gorgeous soul rings rose from his feet, 2 yellow and 1 purple. Soul Elder. Seeing the middle-aged man's 3 soul rings, the old man's face instantly turned pale. His hands that were holding the healing rabbit began to tremble. In his entire life, this was the first time he had seen a soul elder. "Old man, are you afraid now?" The middle-aged man transformed into a horned wolf. Just as he finished speaking, he jumped up and slapped his sharp claws at Chu Bei. Clang! Just as the middle-aged man's claws were about to hit Chu Bei's body, a gorgeous energy membrane lit up around Chu Bei's body. On the light membrane, a tyrannical force emerged. Although the middle-aged man didn't directly explode like the golden-scaled guard, his figure was still forced back several meters. After stabilizing his body, he transformed back into his human form. What's going on? What is that? The middle-aged man frowned and looked at the energy membrane around Chu Bei's body with vigilance. That old man actually received Lord Zhou's attack. But why didn't he even release his martial soul? Could it be that he has some life-saving method? Seeing the middle-aged man being forced back, the little girl and the 6 golden-scaled guards behind her looked at each other in dismay, their faces filled with disbelief. Senior Grandpa, you're fine. That's great. Just as little Oscar was happy, Chu Bei's figure suddenly disappeared from his original position. When he reappeared, he was already in front of the middle-aged man. In the next moment, under the horrified gazes of everyone present, Chu Bei stretched out his hand and grabbed the middle-aged man's neck. Then, he suddenly exerted force. Without waiting for the middle-aged man to resist, with a cracking sound, the middle-aged man's neck was completely shattered. At this moment, the middle-aged man's tyrannical aura also disappeared without a trace. Lord Zhou is dead! How could it be like this? He is a rank 37 soul elder! Seeing the middle-aged man's corpse on the ground, the 6 golden-scaled guards were dumbfounded. They stood there motionless like wood, as if they had lost their souls. When they came back to their senses, the 6 of them hurriedly took a few steps back. When they looked at Chu Bei again, their expressions were filled with deep fear. Chu Bei faintly glanced at the 6 golden-scaled guards. With a wave of his 2 fingers, a small silver sword that was formed from the intertwining energies around him shot out. The small silver sword was originally only the size of a thumb, but when it reached the 6 golden-scaled guards, it had already become 2 zhang long. Qi La! The swift and fierce sword aura swept across. Almost at the same time, the 6 golden-scaled guards fell to the ground. There was a long and sharp bloody wound on their necks, and half of their throats had been cut open. No, no! Looking at the pile of bloody corpses on the ground, the little girl was so frightened that she collapsed to the ground. Her face was pale without a trace of blood, like a frightened kitten. Looking at little Oscar, his mouth was wide open and his eyes were wide open. As for the old man, his originally stiff face became even more numb. Senior Grandpa, please let her go. Little Oscar seemed to have realized what Chu Bei was going to do next. He stepped forward and tugged at the corner of Chu Bei's clothes. He bit his lips and pointed at the little girl. Chu Bei bent down and patted Oscar's little head. He said earnestly, "Remember, when someone has the intention to kill you, if you can, you must kill him on the spot. Don't leave any hidden dangers for yourself. This is the way to survive for a long time." Chu Bei looked at Oscar calmly. His expression was as if he was explaining the truth. After that, Chu Bei looked at the little girl again with a cold gaze. "You can't kill me. If you kill me, you won't be able to live either." The little girl looked at Chu Bei in horror. The hem of her skirt was already wet and kept wriggling backward. Chu Bei ignored her. Using his finger like a knife, he pointed at the little girl's glabella. In an instant, the air was silent. There was a round hole in the little girl's glabella, and blood was flowing out. "Oscar, what are you waiting for? Take the soul ring." Chu Bei's calm voice broke the silence. "Oh." Oscar was stunned at first. When he came back to his senses, he looked at Chu Bei. He immediately picked up the dagger on the ground and stabbed it into the healing rabbit's head. Following the death of the healing rabbit, a faint yellow light gradually rose from the latter's body. The yellow light rippled in the air as if it could dissipate at any time. "Oscar, follow what I taught you earlier. First, use your soul power to guide the soul ring to your body. Then, start meditating and absorb the soul ring's energy." At this moment, the old man also came back to his senses. When he saw the yellow light on the healing rabbit, he quickly said to Oscar, Yes, Grandpa. A faint yellow light lit up from Oscar's hand. He waved at the soul ring produced by the healing rabbit. The soul ring floated over and slowly entered Oscar's body. After about half an hour, a yellow soul ring rose from Oscar's feet. It's a success. The old man's face was filled with excitement. Oscar, let me see your soul skill, Chubei said with curiosity in his eyes. Oscar nodded heavily at Chubei. Then, he opened his right hand and chanted, I have a big sausage. After he finished chanting the incantation, a yellow light suddenly condensed in Oscar's palm. Following that, a steaming hot sausage appeared in his palm. It's an incantation that's still fresh in my memory. When Oscar said I have a big sausage, Chubei couldn't help but sigh. His expression was as if he had successfully confirmed something. Senior Grandpa, the soul skill of my soul ring is healing. Even if you're not injured, you'll feel very comfortable eating it. As he spoke, Oscar handed the big sausage in his hand to Chubei. Chapter 187. Senior Grandpa, with my current soul power, I can only make one in a short period of time. Eat this sausage while it's still warm. Oscar spoke again when he saw that Chubei didn't reach out his hand. Looking at little Oscar's innocent eyes and the sausage in Oscar's palm, Chubei coughed dryly. In the end, he waved his hand and said, Oscar, I'm not hungry at all. You can keep it for yourself. Or give it to your grandpa. Your grandpa is still injured. Okay. Hearing Chubei's words, Oscar immediately turned around and handed the sausage in his hand to the old man. The old man obviously didn't think as much as Chubei and started chewing the sausage in big bites. As the sausage entered his mouth, the old man's injuries didn't recover immediately, but the bleeding started to stop at a speed visible to the naked eye. Sir, why didn't I see your martial soul when you attacked earlier? After the old man finished eating the sausage, he couldn't help but ask Chubei the question in his heart. When your strength reaches a certain level, all your questions will naturally be answered. Chubei glanced at the old man and then looked back at Oscar. Little guy, I said earlier that I'm a businessman. I want to build a business empire. I wonder if you're willing to be my first-class agent? First-class agent? Oscar raised his little head and looked confused. The old man beside him also looked confused. Meeting their gazes, Chubei patiently explained the advantages of being a first-class agent in a shop. Oscar, hurry up and kowtow to thank your senior. To you, this is a great opportunity. Following your senior won't bury your talent. One day, you'll become a powerhouse standing on the continent. After Chubei finished, Oscar was still confused. However, the old man understood and quickly pulled Oscar to thank him. Senior Grandpa, I'm willing to be your first-class agent. Oscar nodded and agreed in confusion. After that, Chubei handed the agent's ring to Oscar. Oscar also bit his finger and dripped his blood on the ring. Host successfully signed Agent Oscar. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress 3%, progress 4%, progress 5%. When the system notification stopped, the conversion progress had reached 13%. On the system's agent interface, other than Xiao Yan, Oscar was added to the list of first-class agents. At this moment, Chubei's appearance gradually changed. The wrinkles on his face lessened, and he looked like he was in his 60s or 70s. As for the changes in his cultivation, Chubei could clearly feel that his body was filled with power. Chubei's current cultivation in the Doloa continent was displayed at the back of the progress bar. Rank 28 Soul Grandmaster. Your Excellency, your appearance? The old man looked at Chubei in a daze and couldn't help but ask. That's not the point. Chubei smiled and then waved his hand. 9 thumb-sized spirit pills that emitted a rich medicinal fragrance appeared in the air. Oscar, this pill is called the Soul Master Pill. Consuming one pill will increase your soul power by 1 rank. As for the price, since you're a first-class agent, it's 10,000 soul coins for 1 pill. Unlike in the Dochi continent, on the Doloa continent, Chu Bei could directly select items from the shopping mall and sell them to first-class agents. Furthermore, the price was terrifyingly low. Of course, because the discount was so great, the system also set a sales limit. These first-class agents could only purchase one large rank of soul power every day at most. For example, Oscar's soul power was currently at rank 11 after obtaining a 100-year soul ring. The pills that he purchased today could only increase his cultivation to rank 20. Sir, you mean that if Oscar consumes these pills, he can immediately reach rank 20? The old man looked at Chu Bei with incomparable shock. However, just as he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something and an awkward expression appeared on his face. Although you don't have money, they do. Chu Bei pointed at the pile of corpses around them. In particular, the middle-aged man's waist actually had a storage soul tool. After hearing Chu Bei's words, the old man was stunned at first, then he immediately rummaged through the pile of corpses. Sir, I found a total of 120,000 soul coins on them. After a long while, the old man returned to Chu Bei's side and placed all the soul coins that he had found into the soul tool. The system has obtained 900 willpower, and the host has obtained 450 willpower. Chu Bei took out 90,000 soul coins from the soul tool, and the system's voice sounded. On the system's interface, compared to the willpower of the Do-Chi continent, the willpower obtained on the Do-Luo continent had a different value. It was very cost-effective to use the willpower of the Do-Luo continent to exchange for goods in the system. Senior Grandpa, can I eat now? Oscar carefully took the 9 soul master pills that Chu Bei handed over. After seeing Chu Bei nod his head, Oscar threw the soul master pills into his mouth one by one. As the pills entered his mouth, a faint ice-cold feeling spread in Oscar's mouth. Following that, warm and pure energy entered his body through his mouth and rushed into his limbs and bones. Almost at the same time, the originally calm air in the surroundings suddenly rippled. Traces of pale white light seeped out from the air, and then continuously entered Oscar's body. Gradually, Oscar's aura began to rise rapidly. Not long after, Oscar's soul power undulations actually surpassed the old man beside him. This is great! Oscar, your soul power has really reached rank 20. When Oscar's aura stabilized, the old man couldn't help but step forward. His trembling hands grabbed Oscar's arms, and his eyes became red and moist. Ever since the day Oscar's martial soul awakened and he found out that Oscar had innate full soul power, he had been in constant trouble. Because he didn't have enough resources, he was afraid that Oscar's future would be ruined in his hands. Until today, when he met his benefactor, the huge rock that was pressing down on his heart was finally lifted. Oscar was only 7 years old, and his soul power was at rank 20. In the entire empire, there were very few people like that. Sir, thank you so much! The old man knelt in front of Chu Bei again, and at the same time pulled Oscar to his side. He pleaded, Sir, please let Oscar stay by your side. Although he's young, he's very sensible. I hope you can accept him. That's my intention. After Chu Bei lifted the old man up, he looked at Oscar and said, Now that you can obtain your second soul ring, continue your search. Okay. Oscar replied in a daze. The old man also took a deep breath. He had never heard of anyone who could obtain 2 soul rings consecutively in a day. This meant that that person's soul power had to cross a large realm in a day's time. Different realms had different upper limits of soul beasts that could be absorbed. For example, from a rank 10 soul scholar to a soul master, the maximum amount of soul beasts that the first soul ring could absorb was about 100 years. In the same realm, the closer one was to the upper limit, the stronger the amplification. The 100-year healing rabbit that Oscar absorbed just now happened to be the upper limit of his realm, so it was considered a good absorption. At the second soul ring, the upper limit was 800 years. At the third soul ring, the upper limit was 1,700 years. At the fourth soul ring, the upper limit was 5,000 years. At the fifth soul ring, the upper limit was 12,000 years. At the sixth soul ring, the upper limit was 20,000 years. At the seventh soul ring, The upper limit was between 30,000 and 50,000 years. After going deeper for a while, Chu Bei found a second suitable soul beast for Oscar. An 800-year black poison scorpion. After successfully absorbing the soul ring, Oscar stepped into the ranks of soul grandmasters. "Grandpa, I will come home often to see you." Outside the soul hunting forest, little Oscar bade farewell to the old man with red eyes. "Follow, sir, and cultivate well. Don't be lazy." Before leaving, the old man reminded him again and again. An hour later. "Boss, where are we going next?" After listening to Chu Bei, Oscar changed the way he addressed Chu Bei. "Great Star Doe Forest." Chu Bei looked at the agent map given by the system and chose the location of a red dot. Due to the change in cultivation, Chu Bei also relaxed a little about the use of willpower. This time, Chu Bei directly exchanged for a void shuttle, using it to pierce through space. When Chu Bei stepped on the void shuttle and brought Oscar through the void, the latter's eyes widened and he was so shocked that he couldn't speak. Great Star Doe Forest. This was a huge primitive forest, and one couldn't see the end of it. The terrain in the forest was complicated, and there were wetlands, swamps, and so on. It was also one of the 3 most famous places where soul beasts gathered in the Doluo continent. It spanned across the borders of the Heaven Do Empire and the Star Luo Empire. 2/5 of it was in the Heaven Do Empire, while the other 3/5 was in the Star Luo Empire. The closer one was to the center of the forest, the stronger the soul beasts were. It was said that there were 100,000-year soul beasts in the depths of the forest. Here, any soul master could find a suitable soul ring as long as they were strong enough and lucky enough. "I heard that the 7 Treasures Glaze sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect have teamed up to hunt soul beasts. I heard that the 2 sects were originally sparring with their disciples. However, someone saw a 10,000-year crypt demon wolf in the periphery of the forest. Coincidentally, the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect's leader is a rank 50 soul ancestor, and he urgently needs a 5th soul ring. Hence, he invited the 7 Treasures Glaze sect to help him hunt it. They've already been in the forest for an hour. They should have found the 10,000-year crypt demon wolf by now. The 7 Treasures Glaze sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect are the top 3 sects on the continent. It'll be great if I can join them, even if I'm just an outer sect disciple. Stop dreaming. Let's continue chopping wood with me. If you weren't born in such a sect, you can forget about joining them for the rest of your life. Speaking of which, I haven't heard any news about the Clear Sky sect all these years. Why is that? I heard that they've gone into seclusion. However, I don't know the reason." At the outermost layer of the Great Star Doe Forest, a group of woodcutters chatted as they chopped wood. Chapter 188. "Boss, have you heard of the 2 sects that they mentioned earlier?" Oscar asked curiously as he lifted his head to look at Chu Bei in the Great Star Doe Forest. The sects on the Doluo continent can be roughly split into 4 levels. The first level sects have 2 or more titled Doluo holding down the fort. There are 3 sects with 2 or more titled Doluo. The 7 Treasures Glaze sect and the Blue Lightning Tyrant Dragon sect are among them. They are the so-called 3 upper sections. As for the second-level sects, they have 1 titled Doluo holding down the fort. There are 4 sects like this, and they are the so-called 4 lower sections. As for the 3rd level and 4th level sects, there are many of them. Chu Bei explained to Oscar based on his memory. "What about the other upper 3 sects? I think it's called the Clear Sky sect," Oscar asked. "This sect has secluded itself from the world. You'll find out the reason why in the future." When the Clear Sky sect was mentioned, Chu Bei thought of Tang Hao, the blacksmith who lived in seclusion in the Holy Soul village. After he finished speaking, Chu Bei continued to lead Oscar deeper into the Great Star Doe Forest. Coincidentally, the location where the system had marked the agent was very close to the hunting spot that the woodcutters had discussed earlier. As Chu Bei and Oscar ventured deeper into the forest, there was a rather spacious area at the border between the inner and outer regions of the Great Star Doe Forest. All the trees had collapsed, and the mountain rocks were shattered into pieces. In the center of the spacious area, deafening sounds of battle and the howls of wolves could be heard. "Brother Ning, I've implicated you this time." In the center of the spacious area, two men were fighting two demonic wolves with horns on their heads and wings on their sides. From the way the two of them were retreating, it was clear that they didn't have the upper hand. "How can I blame you for this? Who would have thought that there were actually two demonic wolves?" A man with a 7-story pagoda emblem on his back shook his head and sighed. His voice carried a hint of helplessness. "Disciples of both sects, listen up. Retreat immediately. The faster, the better." Another man with a Tyrannosaurus Rex emblem on his back looked at the spectating disciples not far away as he spoke in a deep voice. However, despite the man's command, none of the disciples from the two sects left. "This disciple of the blue lightning tyrant dragon will never retreat. I'm willing to live and die with you. The disciples of the 7 treasures glazed sect will never retreat. We are willing to live and die with the elders." The disciples of the two sects seemed to have already made up their minds. Not only did they not leave, but they also clenched their fists. It seemed that if the 2 elders had not stopped them, they would have already joined the battle without regard for their lives. On the battlefield, Yu Heng and Ning Feng glanced at each other, and then they both laughed bitterly and shook their heads. "Protect these little fellows with your life." Ning Feng of the 7 treasures glazed sect helplessly turned around to look at the disciples behind him. Then, his gaze focused as he shouted, "7 treasures glazed sect has glazed sect." Ning Feng's body floated in a circle, and a dazzling 7-colored light was suddenly released from his body. At the place where the 7-colored light condensed, there was a 7-colored pagoda that was more than a foot tall in his right palm. The pagoda flickered with a noble aura. At the same time, 2 yellow and 2 purple soul rings rose from beneath his feet and quietly revolved around his body. The first of the 7 treasures is strength amplification. The second of the 7 treasures is agility amplification. The third of the 7 treasures is soul power amplification. The fourth of the 7 treasures is strength amplification. After he shouted, Ning Feng's 4 soul rings enveloped the 7-colored pagoda. Then, he pointed with his left hand, and 4 streaks of colorful light were released at the same time, enveloping Yu Heng of the blue lightning tyrant dragon sect. "Ah!" Almost at the same time, Yu Heng shouted, and his 4 soul rings lit up at the same time. He transformed into a 3-meter-tall tyrant dragon, and electric currents kept sizzling from his head. "Thunderous Dragon Claw!" With Ning Feng's support, Yu Heng's sharp claws slapped towards a crypt fiend wolf, and a dragon claw formed from bluish-purple lightning shot out. Oh! Faced with Ning Feng and Yu Heng's attacks, the 2 crypt fiend wolves didn't seem to care at all. As they howled, they flapped the wings on their backs, and densely packed black lightning snakes surrounded their bodies. They formed lightning arrows that flashed in the air to form a net of lightning. Whoosh, whoosh! Amidst the air-breaking sounds, the 2 crypt fiend wolves opened their ferocious mouths and revealed their sharp teeth. Their bodies spun wildly in the black lightning net like high-speed spinning tops. Bang, bang! Perhaps it was because of the huge difference in strength. Even though Ning Feng and Yu Heng had used all their trump cards, they were still blasted away by the crypt fiend wolves. The huge impact directly caused the 2 of them to create a deep crater on the ground. "Elders, how are you guys?" Seeing Ning Feng and Yu Heng climb out of the crater, the disciples from the 2 sects hurriedly asked. At this moment, Ning Feng and Yu Heng's clothes were tattered, and their bodies were covered in blood. Especially the former, who was mainly a support, his face was pale, and his aura was extremely weak. Hearing the worried and anxious questions of the disciples from the 2 sects, Ning Feng and Yu Heng looked at each other again, and their eyes were filled with unwillingness and helplessness. They knew their bodies the best. Under the impact of the crypt fiend wolves, many of the ribs in their bodies had been broken. Presently, their entire bodies were filled with pain as if ants were gnawing at their hearts, and the soul energy within their bodies was extremely chaotic as well, causing them to be on the verge of losing their combat strength. Gradually, the disciples of the two sects seemed to have discerned the state of Ningfeng and Yuheng, and they all moved forward to surround the two of them in the center. After that, they stared intently at the two crypt fiend wolves without the slightest trace of fear on their faces. "It's fine if we die, but I pity this group of little fellows. They haven't even matured yet." Ningfeng sighed successively, and his eyes were filled with an apology towards the disciples of the two sections. Even the two of them weren't a match for the crypt fiend wolves, let alone these disciples that were barely soul grandmasters. "Ow!" The two crypt fiend wolves licked their lips and looked at the disciples of the two sects as if they were looking at prey, and their scarlet-red eyes revealed ferocity. "I really should have come alone. Even if I die, it's only me." Yu Heng's words carried dense regret. If it wasn't for him wanting the soul rings of the crypt fiend wolves, he wouldn't have caused everyone to fall into a dead situation. At a time like this, there's no meaning in saying this. "Acheron, let's accompany me on the way." Yu Heng mocked himself. "Even if we can't kill these two crypt fiend wolves, we have to make them lose some of their skin." Yu Heng forcefully endured the pain in his body and walked to the front of the disciples of the two sections. The soul rings on his body lit up once again, and the light was gorgeous and resplendent. It wasn't just Yu Heng. The soul rings of Ningfeng and all the disciples of the two sects lit up as they stared at the two crypt fiend wolves that were constantly approaching. "You guys are in a very dangerous situation." Just when Yu Heng and the others were ready to carry out the final battle with the crypt fiend wolves, a voice that carried a smile sounded from the nearby forest. In the next moment, a white-haired old man leisurely walked into the battlefield with a 7 or 8-year-old child in his line of sight. "Old man, this isn't a place you can come to. Leave quickly." Yu Heng frowned when he couldn't detect Chu Bei's soul power fluctuations and immediately urged Chu Bei and Oscar to leave. "If I help you guys resolve this crisis, then you guys have to take care of my business." Chu Bei's calm voice fell, and then under the puzzled gazes of Yu Heng, Ningfeng, and the others, he slowly raised his right palm towards the two crypt fiend wolves. "Oh!" One of the crypt fiend wolves seemed to have sensed Chu Bei's provocation and let out a furious howl. It flapped the wings on its back and densely packed black lightning snakes coiled around its body, forming a lightning arrow that flashed explosively in the air to form a dense lightning net. Whoosh! Amidst the sound of the air being torn apart, the crypt fiend wolf opened its savage mouth to reveal its sharp teeth. Its entire body madly spun within the black lightning net like a high-speed spinning top as it smashed towards Chu Bei. Ningfeng and Yu Heng's expressions were heavy when they saw the crypt fiend wolf's move. The two of them were heavily injured by the crypt fiend wolf's attack. In their opinion, only a soul king would be able to withstand such a terrifying attack. Looking at the crypt fiend wolf that was rapidly charging towards him like a spinning top, Chu Bei waved his right hand. With a loud bang, an almost solid energy palm stretched out from Chu Bei's palm and met the crypt fiend wolf head-on. Bang! The two collided. First, there was a muffled sound of collision. Immediately after, under several horrified gazes, the giant energy palm forcefully blocked the crypt fiend wolf's attack and suddenly clenched its fist. Instantly, the miserable and painful howl of the crypt fiend wolf rang out and drifted in the air. At this moment, the crypt fiend wolf that was caught by the giant energy palm no longer had its previous arrogance. It was like it had become a toy that was at the mercy of others. It was being kneaded into a ball from time to time, and its savage wolf head was almost twisted into a ball from the pain. Crack! A moment later, a strange sound that sounded like a sponge being squeezed was heard. Subsequently, under several gazes, the giant energy palm opened up and a black shadow fell from the center of the palm. The crypt fiend wolf that had a monstrous aura and was surrounded by thunderbolts a second ago was now like a meat patty that had been run over by a BMW. Its entire body was dripping with blood and it could not be more dead. So powerful! This old man. No, who exactly is this senior? Looking at the situation now, we shouldn't be in any danger. Looking at the crypt fiend wolf's corpse not far away, Yu Heng, Ningfeng, and the disciples from the two sects all gulped. When they looked at Chu Bei again, their gazes were filled with deep respect. Oh woo! The remaining crypt fiend wolf glanced at its dead companion on the ground and looked up at Chu Bei. Deep fear rose in its eyes. After a howl, it immediately flapped its wings. Unfortunately, before it could flap its wings and fly high, the giant energy palm had already arrived above its body. Just like before, the giant energy palm caught the crypt fiend wolf in one go. Senior, if it's possible, I hope you can give me the fatal blow. Just as Chu Bei was about to kill the other crypt fiend wolf, Yu Heng's anxious voice sounded. Hearing that, Chu Bei glanced at Yu Heng. After squeezing the crypt fiend wolf half to death, he threw it in front of the ladder. Thank you, Master, for saving my life and giving me the soul ring. Looking at the dying crypt fiend wolf beneath his feet, Yu Heng hurriedly bowed to Chu Bei and smashed his fist onto the crypt fiend wolf's head. Chapter 189. Just as Yu Heng killed the crypt demon wolf, spots of black light surged out of the latter's body and formed a ring. Seeing the soul ring appear, Yu Heng immediately raised his right hand and absorbed the soul ring with ease. Senior, I'm Lightning Tyrant Dragon Sex Elder Yu Heng. We're indebted to you this time. If you run into any trouble in the future, you can use this token to come to our sect. Our sect will do our best to help. After successfully absorbing the soul ring, Yu Heng took out a jade token with a tyrant dragon engraved on it and passed it to Chu Bei. The same goes for the 7 Treasures Glazed sect. Ning Feng also bowed to Chu Bei with his sect's disciples and handed over a pagoda-shaped token. Before I acted, I said that I'm a businessman. After I've helped you resolve your crisis, you have to take care of my business. Chu Bei brushed away Yu Heng and Ning Feng's tokens and smiled. Hearing this, Yu Heng and Ning Feng looked at each other, and then at Chu Bei. They asked in confusion, Senior, what are you selling? How do you need us to take care of your business? Chu Bei swept his gaze across the two of them, and waved his right hand. Buzz, the void trembled, and a ripple appeared. A golden disk appeared from the ripples and emitted a blinding light. The light dissipated and one could see that the disk was divided into 10 regions. Each region flickered with a square box of a different color. There was a silver pointer on the disk and there were 7 words engraved at the top. Rank 5 Wheel of Fortune. This. Yu Heng and Ning Feng's pupils shrank as they looked at the wheel that appeared out of thin air and floated in the air. While they were shocked, they sized up Chu Bei again. However, after some observation, they didn't see anything similar to a storage-type soul tool on him. This wheel will spin for 500,000 soul coins. Each of you can spin it once. Chu Bei pointed at the wheel as his gaze swept successively past Yu Heng and Ning Feng before he spoke indifferently. 1 million soul coins was the remaining amount he could sell today. 500,000 soul coins for a box? Is there anything inside? While Yu Heng and Ning Feng were confused, they each took out 500,000 soul coins. Their lives were worth far more than 500,000. In their eyes, this was a way to repay Chu Bei. Buzz, a whirlpool appeared in the center of the disk and swallowed 1 million soul coins. The system has gained 10,000 willpower points. The host has gained 5,000 willpower points. The sound of the system rang out, and the silver needle on the disk spun. Ding! About 10 seconds later, the 2 square boxes flew in front of Yu Heng and Ning Feng. Rumble! With 2 loud noises, the square box exploded. The words, "Thank you for your patronage," were dazzling on the square box in front of Yu Heng. Yu Heng shook his head when he saw this outcome, but he wasn't angry. After all, he'd taken this 500,000 renminbi as a reward for the other party. As for the square box in front of Ning Feng, after the explosion, there was a bottle of blue liquid with blue mist lingering around the mouth of the bottle. Senior, what is this? Ning Feng pointed at the blue liquid and looked at Chu Bei in confusion. You'll know after you drink it. Chu Bei smiled. Meeting Chu Bei's gaze, Ning Feng hesitated for a moment before swallowing the blue liquid. He was originally saved by the other party from the demon wolf. If the other party wanted to harm him, There was no need for him to go through so much trouble. Bang! Just as Ning Feng swallowed the blue liquid, a low muffled sound came from his body. Immediately after, his entire body lit up with a faint silver light. Immediately after, 4 soul rings lit up on his body. 2 yellow and 2 purple, representing 200-year soul rings and 2,000-year soul rings. Senior, what happened to Brother Ning? Yu Heng pointed at Ning Feng, whose body was acting strangely. However, just as he finished speaking, he seemed to have discovered the latter's change. He was startled and a touch of shock surged onto his face. Ning Feng's first yellow soul ring, which was originally only a 100-year soul ring, began to turn purple. After it turned purple, it continued to change and finally turned black. Look quickly! Elder Ning's first soul ring changed from a 100-year to a 10,000-year soul ring. Heavens! There's actually such a miraculous thing! Is it because of the blue liquid that Elder Ning just drank? What exactly is that thing? Witnessing Ning Feng's first soul ring change from yellow to black, the disciples of the 2 sects were dumbfounded with shock written all over their faces. They never thought that a soul ring could increase in age at a later stage. This scene had completely shattered their understanding of the world. Senior, this. Looking at his first soul ring that turned black, Ning Feng was so excited that he found it hard to add on. He stared at Chu Bei in disbelief and was momentarily speechless. The liquid you just drank is called Beast Soul Medicine. It can increase the age of a soul ring. Chu Bei briefly explained the effects of the blue liquid. Senior, do you still have this medicine? I can spend money to buy it. Yu Heng hurriedly went forward with a face full of desire. He glanced at Ning Feng from time to time with a face full of envy. Only now did he understand that this was really a transaction and could even be said to be a benefit. It was just that his luck was too bad and he didn't get it. If we are fated, let's make another transaction next time. Chu Bei shook his head. Rumble. Just as the disciples of the 2 sects were still immersed in Ning Feng's soul ring that had increased in age, the ground suddenly trembled as if an earthquake had occurred. All the birds in the forest flew up. Following this, the sound of a little girl crying came from the forest in the north. Very quickly, this crying little girl appeared in everyone's line of sight. The little girl was about 5 or 6 years old, and wore a white dress. Her long black hair was combed into a scorpion braid that fell past her hips. Her pretty little face was white with a tinge of red, and her pink and tender appearance was like a ripe peach that made people have the urge to take a bite. However, those big watery eyes that were red from crying couldn't help but make people feel pity for her and want to hug her and comfort her. Looking at the little girl who appeared, Chu Bei smiled knowingly and revealed a playful expression. This little girl was the target of his trip. Judging from the markings on the map, the little girl was already in the vicinity before he arrived. It could even be said that she had witnessed the entire battle between Yu Heng, Ning Feng, and the crypt demon wolf. What did this little girl go through? She's crying so pitifully. Why is she alone in the great Star Dove forest? The disciples of the 2 sects looked at the little girl with sympathy in their eyes. Please save me, Wu, save me! The little girl cried as she ran towards the people of the 2 sects, begging for help. Little girl, don't be afraid. Tell us, who is it that wants to hurt you? Yu Heng waved at the little girl. Just as he spoke to comfort her, 2 tall trees behind the little girl were suddenly snapped, and an enormous figure appeared. When they saw the big fellow's appearance, everyone from the 2 sects, including Yu Heng and Ning Feng, was stunned and their breathing seemed to stop. It was an existence that was like a small mountain. The black fur on its entire body flickered with a faint luster under the sunlight. Even though it was on all fours, its shoulder height was definitely over 7 meters. If it stood upright, its height would probably be over 15 meters. From the outside, its entire body was pitch black, like an ape or a chimpanzee. Its pair of lantern-sized eyes flickered with the luster of topaz. Other than its enormous body, every part of its body was covered with terrifyingly strong muscles that were even more terrifying than granite. It was filled with a sense of strength. It was this enormous creature that was chasing the little girl. That's the king of the forest, the Titan giant ape! Yu Heng and Ning Feng exchanged a glance again, and after confirming that they weren't hallucinating, they let loose a trembling cry. Boss, is the Titan giant ape that powerful? Yu Heng's cry of surprise sounded, and Oscar appraised the gargantuan creature up ahead before turning to Chu Bei. No matter where the Titan giant ape appears in the Soul Beast forest, it's an absolute overlord. They possess unparalleled strength and speed, and their attacks and defenses are virtually flawless. Even a 100-year Titan giant ape can contend with a 10,000-year soul beast. After that, Chu Bei continued to appraise the Titan giant ape and fell into deep thought. He was thinking about how he was going to cooperate with this gargantuan creature and the little girl's performance. With his omniscient view, he was naturally aware of the relationship between Xiao Wu and Ming. Ming was currently chasing Xiao Wu so that Xiao Wu would be able to blend into the human race more easily. Esteemed king of the forest, she's still a child. Please let her go. If this is your territory, we're willing to take her away from here right away. Sure enough, Yu Heng immediately stepped forward and caught the stumbling little girl in his arms before extending a respectful bow toward the Titan giant ape. They truly couldn't imagine why the king of the forest, who lived in the core region of the Great Star Dove Forest, would appear here and chase after a frail little girl. According to the information that he had gathered, there was only one Titan giant ape in the Great Star Dove Forest, and it had already cultivated for over 80,000 years. It was quite clear that this was the Titan giant ape that was over 80,000 years old. The Titan giant ape glanced at Yu Heng with disdain in its eyes. It harumphed coldly, and several cracks appeared on the ground beneath its feet. In the next instant, the Titan giant ape rose into the air and instantly appeared in the air above Yu Heng. Compared to the gargantuan body of the Titan giant ape, Yu Heng appeared extremely tiny and insignificant. Rumble! The terrifying energy fluctuations emanating from the Titan giant ape's body created a deafening sonic boom in the air. Yu Heng's pupils constricted upon sensing the fearsome aura emanating from above, and he couldn't muster up any resistance. Elder, be careful! The disciples of the lightning tyrant dragon sect immediately screamed. Their voices were filled with anxiety and worry, and their hearts were in their throats. Although Yu Heng had successfully absorbed the soul ring of the demon wolf and become a soul king, he was still far from enough in front of the king of the forest, who had over 80,000 years of cultivation. Woo woo! The Titan giant ape roared into the sky, and frightening soundwaves spread as its powerful claws swiped towards Yu Heng. Yu Heng's face was ashen as he watched the claws come closer and closer, and sensed the frightening energy fluctuations contained within them. He didn't expect the king of the forest to be so cruel and domineering. However, just as the Titan giant ape's sharp claws were about to land on Yu Heng's head, he seemed to be struck by an invisible force. With a boom, he was sent flying and crashed heavily onto the ground. Following this, the Titan giant ape let out a mournful howl. It looked fearfully in Chu Bei's direction before it turned and ran into the depths of the forest. Its howl was filled with indignation. Yu Heng turned to Chu Bei with a conflicted expression upon hearing this. Little fellow, if you want to avenge your mother, the best choice is to follow me. Chu Bei lowered his head and looked at the little girl with a smile on his face. Chapter 190. Senior, I'm afraid you heard wrongly. The one who was killed by the Titan giant ape was the grandfather who adopted her. Hearing Chu Bei's words, Yu Heng hurriedly corrected him. As for the little girl, her frail body trembled violently as she looked at Chu Bei in disbelief. Little fellow, who are you going to follow now? Chu Bei crossed his arms in front of his chest with a teasing expression. I'll follow you. The pitiful look on the little girl's face disappeared and was replaced by an extremely serious expression. As she spoke, the little girl broke free from Yu Heng's hands and walked to Chu Bei's right side. Yu Heng and Ning Feng glanced at each other when they saw this scene, and their faces carried bewilderment. They were unable to wrap their heads around why the little girl's choice would change. You made the right choice. Chubei nodded in satisfaction. Unlike humans, soul beasts started cultivating from birth and were divided into 10 years, 100 years, 1,000 years, 10,000 years, 100,000 years, and even the legendary million years. Every increase in rank was a qualitative change for soul beasts. When a soul beast's cultivation broke through 10,000 years, its intelligence would increase rapidly. At a certain level, it would not be inferior to a human. When a soul beast cultivated to 100,000 years, any soul beast would reach a strange level. At this level, soul beast's strength was almost the same. At this level, soul beasts also had to face a choice. One was to maintain their original strength and continue to live in their original form. However, after reaching 100,000 years, most soul beasts could only live for another 1,000 years at most. The other option was to transform into a human and cultivate from the beginning. The little girl in front of them had walked the second path. Of course, the reason she chose to transform into a human was to avenge her mother. And the one who hunted the little girl's mother was the strongest faction on the continent, the Martial Soul Hall. Senior, if you have time, you must visit my lightning tyrant dragon sect. Yuhan cupped his fists at Chubei again. I don't know when I will be free in your sect, but I will be making a trip to the Seven Treasures Glazed sect soon. Chubei looked at Ningfeng. Senior, I will wait for you at the sect. Ningfeng was delighted. After the two sects left, Oscar walked to the little girl and couldn't help but ask, What's your name? Her name is Xiao Wu, Wu as in dancing. Before the little girl could speak, Chubei's voice drifted through the air. Immediately, the little girl raised her head and stared at Chubei. Her eyes were round and her face was filled with disbelief. You, how do you know my name? Also, how did you know about my mother's death? Who the hell are you? After recovering from her shock, Xiao Wu asked 3 questions in a row, and the vigilance in her eyes became even more obvious. Yu and Erming's performance was quite impressive. Even I was impressed, Chubei said with a smile. This time, Xiao Wu directly pulled away from Chubei, her brows tightly knitted together. Little fellow, don't be nervous. You and I are fated to meet. The reason why I'm keeping you is because I want you to be my first-class agent. As soon as he finished speaking, Chubei instantly moved closer to Xiao Wu. Under the latter's terrified gaze, his index finger gently tapped the space between her eyebrows. With the influx of information, the vigilance on Xiao Wu's face began to recede. I'm willing to be your agent. After a long while, Xiao Wu nodded at Chubei. Host has successfully signed a first-class agent, Xiao Wu. Battle through the heavens cultivation conversion is accelerating. Progress at 14%. Progress at 15%. Progress at 16%. The moment Xiao Wu dripped her blood on the agent's ring, the system's voice rang out in Chubei's mind. When the system's voice stopped, the cultivation conversion progress on the Douqi continent had increased from 13% to 22%. At the end of the progress bar, it showed that Chubei's current cultivation on the Doluo continent was a rank 37 Soul Elder. When he looked at the agent's interface, he saw that Xiao Wu's name had been added to the list. With the increase in his cultivation, Chubei's appearance changed once again. His white hair was now tinged with black. The next day, Heaven Do Empire, 7 Treasures Glazed sect. That old man you were talking about actually has such a trick up his sleeve. Outside the glazed hall, a scholarly middle-aged man looked at Ningfeng's first soul ring with a shocked expression. This middle-aged man was the head of the 7 Treasures Glazed sect, the #1 support-type soul master on the continent, Ningfengji. Can you taste the contents of that liquid? The person who spoke was a white-clothed old man standing to Ningfengji's right. It doesn't have any taste, but when it entered my mouth, it felt cold. After passing through my throat, it turned into a warm current that swept through my entire body. It's very magical. Ningfeng recalled the feeling of swallowing the beast's soul medicine. You're saying that he defeated the Titan giant ape in the Heaven Do Great Forest without making a move? At this moment, A withered old man to Ning Fingji's left spoke. He was so thin that he looked like a bag of bones. Ning Feng nodded. It wasn't just me. The other disciples in the sect with me saw it with their own eyes. If that senior hadn't made a move, I'm afraid we would have all died at the hands of that savage Titan giant ape. After getting confirmation from Ning Feng again, the two old men beside Ning Fingji looked at each other with a strange look in their eyes. Even if they were strong enough to go up against that Titan giant ape, it wouldn't be easy even if they could win. These two old men were the seven treasures glazed sect cypress jade pillar and purple gold millet, the two protectors of the sect. The white-clothed old man was called Sword, and his name was Chen Xian. He was known as the strongest titled Dolua in terms of offense, and his soul power was as high as rank 96. The withered old man was called Gu Rong, and his name was Gu Rong. His soul power was as high as rank 95, and he was known for being unpredictable and difficult to deal with. The reason why the Seven Treasures Glazed sect could become one of the three upper sects was related to the Ning family's support-type martial soul, but it definitely couldn't do without the support of these two titled Doluo. The martial soul hall's evaluation of the Seven Treasures Glazed sect was, when sword and bone meet, the Seven Treasures Glazed sect master will shine with an invincible light when he appears. Grandpa Jian, we haven't seen each other for an hour. Do you miss Rongrong? Rongrong misses you so much. Boo-hoo! At this moment, a 5 or 6-year-old little girl ran out from the hall. She ran directly into the arms of the white-clothed old man and pretended to cry. The white-clothed old man hurriedly hugged the little girl's delicate body. Be good, my little baby. Half an hour is such a long time. Of course Grandpa Jian misses you. I miss you so much. The little girl lifted her head. Really? The white-clothed old man said seriously. Of course it's true. The little girl looked at the withered old man. Grandpa Gu, then do you miss me? Of course, I miss you more than Grandpa Jian. The withered old man hurriedly took the little girl from the white-clothed old man's arms. Bullshit. The white-clothed old man didn't give the withered old man any face. I'm the one who misses Rongrong more. You're the one who's bullshit. The withered old man released a strong aura. I'm the one who wants more. Why? Find a place to fight one-on-one? The white-clothed old man's aura also started to rise. All right. Uncle Jian, Uncle Gu, you've been fighting your whole life. Ning Fingji hurriedly calmed the two old men down. Then he glared at the little girl. Rongrong, don't be naughty! Humph! The white-clothed old man and the withered old man snorted almost at the same time. Neither of them looked at the other. Their gazes fell on the little girl. The little girl rolled her big eyes and said, I have a way to prove which grandpa misses me more. Grandpas, how about this? You both give Rongrong a gift. Whoever's gift Rongrong likes more will be the one who misses Rongrong more. Hearing the little girl's words and sensing the slyness in her eyes, the two old men looked at each other and twitched the corners of their mouths. They had fallen into this little witch's trap again. Rumble. While Chen Xian and Gu Rong were thinking about what gift to give Ning Rongrong, a violent roar suddenly came from above the colored glass palace. Immediately afterward, a 10-meter-long behemoth slowly emerged from the void. The huge commotion not only attracted the attention of Ning Fingji and the others, but also the other disciples and elders in the sect. They all rushed over after hearing the noise and looked up at the sky above the colored glass palace. Look! What is that? It can float in the air. There seem to be 3 people up there. The disciples were discussing animatedly. Grandpas, what's that? Rongrong wants it too. In front of the colored glass palace, Ning Rongrong grabbed Chen Xian and Gu Rong with both hands and stared at the space shuttle above the colored glass pagoda. Her eyes were shining. Ning Fingji, Chen Xian, and Gu Rong didn't pay attention to Ning Rongrong. Instead, they looked at the 3 figures on the space shuttle and gradually frowned. Senior, I didn't expect you to come so soon. At this moment, Ning Feng, who saw Bei's appearance clearly, cried out in surprise. His shout was filled with excitement. Hearing this, Ning Fingji, Qin Xian, and Gu Rong immediately looked at Ning Feng. Is he the old man who made your soul ring evolve? Qin Xian frowned and said. But judging from his appearance, he seems younger than me. Elder Jian, you don't know. Today's senior is younger than yesterday. At your level, you can rejuvenate, can't you? Ning Feng bowed to Qin Xian respectfully. Qin Xian nodded and didn't care about Chu Bei's appearance anymore. I told you yesterday that we would meet again soon. As they spoke, Chu Bei landed in front of the colored glass palace with Oscar and Xiao Wu. Thank you for saving our disciples from danger yesterday. Ning Fingji clasped his hands at Chu Bei with gratitude in his eyes. I happened to pass by, so I did it on the way. Chu Bei looked indifferent. May I know why you have come to our sect? If you need help, we will do our best to help you. Ning Fingji looked curious. Chu Bei looked at Ning Fingji and then pointed at the little girl between Qin Xian and Gu Rong. I'm here for her. What do you mean? Hearing Chu Bei's words, not only Ning Fingji, but also Qin Xian and Gu Rong's faces darkened. Ning Rongrong was their favorite. If anyone dared to have any ideas about her, they would kill him even if it meant risking their lives. Chapter 191. Don't be nervous. I have no intention of harming her. Chu Bei glanced at Ning Fingji, Qin Xian, and Gu Rong with a faint smile. Please speak frankly. Ning Fingji and the other two relaxed. I am a businessman who is preparing to build a business empire. Now I need her to be my first-class agent. Chu Bei stated his purpose directly. Are you kidding? Rong is still a child. She hasn't even awakened her martial soul. You want her to be your agent? Ning Fingji frowned. I'm not kidding. Chu Bei's expression became serious. I need to take her away for a while and teach her cultivation on your behalf. Teach Rong on our behalf? Qin Xian snorted coldly. Do you know who we are? We will teach Rong personally. Do you think she will be inferior to you? Sir, although you have done our sect a favor, you can leave now if there is nothing else. Ning Fingji asked him to leave. Little one, is it boring to be trapped in the sect every day? Do you want to see the outside world with me? Chu Bei ignored Ning Fingji. His eyes fell on Ning Rongrong, and he guided her patiently. His primary purpose in coming to the Doluo continent was to unlock a rank 11 commodity. The condition for unlocking this commodity was to build a business empire with a system rating of more than 95. At this moment, he already had a complete plan. The implementation of this plan was inseparable from these little ones who were his first-class agents. Can I sit on that? Ning Rongrong looked at Chu Bei and pointed at the space shuttle hovering above the colored glass palace. Her face was full of expectation. Of course you can. Chu Bei nodded and smiled. Clang! As soon as Chu Bei finished speaking, a long sword suddenly stopped in front of him and Ning Rongrong. The blade of the sword flashed with cold light. Sir, don't go too far. Qin Xian pulled Ning Rongrong behind him and looked coldly at Chu Bei. A fierce aura came out of his body. Letting her follow me for a period of time will only be beneficial to her. Chu Bei smiled. With a wave of his hand, he easily dissolved the fierce momentum released by Qin Xian. Your Excellency is so stubborn. Could it be that you want to spar with me? Qin Xian narrowed his eyes. According to Ning Feng, you also defeated the Titan giant ape in the Great Star Do Forest. I really want to fight with you. Sparring is fine. But if I win, I wonder if I can let this little girl follow me for a period of time so that I can teach her? Chu Bei once again shifted the topic to Ning Rongrong. No problem. Even as Qin Xian fell silent, Ning Fingji took a step forward and agreed. Sect Master, Uncle Qin, this is my decision. What's more, there aren't many people in the entire continent who can defeat you. Qin Xian was about to say something when Ning Fingji waved his hand and interrupted him. When Chu Bei opened his mouth to spar, he had already made his decision. If his opponent could really defeat Chen Xian, even if he wanted to take Ning Rongrong with him, they would be helpless. Furthermore, if his opponent really had that kind of strength, Ning Rongrong would only benefit from following him, just as he had said. In addition, their Seven Treasures Glazed sect had another super expert that they could ask for help from. Of course, this was based on the premise that Chu Bei could defeat Chen Xian. In Ning Fengji's opinion, this was almost impossible. Your Excellency, our sect master has spoken. Please! As his deep voice faded, Chen Xian reached out his right hand and grasped the hilt of the floating long sword. Then, he rose into the air. In the next moment, Chen Xian's 9 soul rings lit up. His momentum rose steadily. Looking at the sword in Chen Xian's hand, which was shining with cold light, Xiao Wu's eyes were filled with worry. Don't worry. Boss is very strong. Oscar looked at Xiao Wu and said, You just don't know who he is. He is the Sword Doluo, who is known as the strongest titled Doluo in terms of offense. Xiao Wu's eyes were fixed on Chen Xian. She knew about the top experts on the continent, including the Sword Doluo and the Bone Doluo, who was beside Ning Fengji. Chu Bei looked at Chen Xian, who had already appeared in the sky. He took a step forward and also appeared in the sky. He stood with his hands behind his back and faced Chen Xian from afar. Look at the sky. That's Elder Jian and the person who just came down from the spaceship. Flying in the sky? Is that person also a titled Doluo? Maybe he has a flying type soul skill. What are they going to do? Looking at their posture, that person is not going to spar with Elder Jian, is he? The disciples around the glazed palace all raised their heads and fixed their eyes on the two voices in the sky. They were discussing animatedly. Grandpa Gu, do you think Grandpa Jian can defeat him? Ning Rongrong looked at Gu Rong and pointed at Chu Bei in the sky. Her eyes were filled with anticipation. Don't worry. Gu Rong patted Ning Rongrong's little head. Looking at the entire continent, there are only a few people who can defeat your Grandpa Jian. The person in the sky is not one of them. Gu Rong looked at the sky again after she finished speaking with a smile. On the battlefield, Chen Xian, the Sword Doluo, waved his sleeves and greeted him. Are you ready? Chu Bei was calm and composed. Since you like to play with your sword, I'll compete with you in the way of the sword. After he finished speaking, Chu Bei bent his finger and pointed. The energy in the air was turbulent, and a thin sword about 2.5 feet long that was completely made of the energy of heaven and earth appeared strangely. Although the thin sword was made of pure energy, the cold light emitted from the blade was not weaker than that of a real sword. One look at it would make one's heart tremble. Your martial soul is also a sword? Chen Xian glanced at the thin energy sword in front of Chu Bei and focused his eyes. Chu Bei shook his head. No. Chen Xian frowned. Then why did your sword appear out of thin air? Chu Bei smiled knowingly. The world is so big. There are many things you don't know. Chen Xian was stunned. Then he laughed loudly. Okay, then let me see how your way of the sword is. After his indifferent voice, 9 soul rings lit up on Chen Xian's body. The long sword in his hand vibrated violently. Almost at the same time, the air around him trembled and emitted a buzzing sound. His soul power seemed to be drawn by an invisible thread and poured into the long sword in his hand little by little. Chu Bei also put one hand on the hilt of the thin energy sword. Although he couldn't feel any soul power fluctuation from his body, there was an unknown and indescribable aura rising. Compared to soul power, this powerful aura was not inferior at all. Has the fight between the two of them evolved into a contest of the way of the sword? Sword Elder is known to be the strongest in the way of the sword. But why do I feel that his sword intent isn't weaker than Sword Elder's? Below, the elders of the 7 Treasures Glazed sect gathered together. Their eyes kept switching between Chen Xian and Chu Bei. Boom! Almost at the same time, 2 sharp auras gushed out from the battlefield, accompanied by a loud explosion. The two of them didn't attack. They just raised their swords. However, the collision of their sword auras tore the air apart, and created a huge gap. Even though they were dozens of feet away from the collision of their sword auras, the people below still felt a chill on their faces. They felt a sharp pain as if they were being cut by a knife. Subconsciously, they retreated further away. You have some attainments in the way of the sword. Chen Xian looked at Chu Bei. Just from the collision of their sword auras, he knew that Chu Bei's understanding of the way of the sword was not weaker than his. After he finished speaking, Chen Xian's expression became extremely serious. He danced with his sword. It was ethereal and swift. His sword technique was as fleeting as a breeze, as flowing water, as white clouds, as waves. It was ever-changing. Take this! After he finished accumulating his power, Chen Xian shouted. The sword light in his hand was as stunning as a dragon, stirring up the river and the sea. With a swoosh, it shot toward Chu Bei like a bolt of lightning. Chu Bei smiled. He didn't dodge. His sleeves fluttered as he swung his sword diagonally. If Sword Doluo Chen Xian's sword was so fast that it was hard to predict, then Chu Bei's sword was ordinary. It was just a pure white sword light. However, although this sword light looked ordinary, it shot out like a bolt of lightning. Wherever it passed, the air was turbulent. It was as if the waves were struck by lightning. In the fierce and devastating sword intent, the air cracked. The two sword lights intertwined and reflected each other. Lightning danced wildly. Everyone in the sect, including Ning Fingji and Gu Rong, was shocked to see this shocking scene. Their faces turned pale with fright. In particular, the disciples of the sect. They had never seen such a thrilling battle. Moreover, it was a pure contest of sword techniques. Boom! With a loud bang, the two sword lights dissipated at the same time. The devastating sword aura also dissipated. Awesome! This is the first time I've fought to my heart's content since I reached rank 96 and achieved the great mastery of the way of the sword. Sword Doluo Chen Xian roared as he looked at the dissipating light. A smile suddenly appeared on his face. His voice was filled with excitement. Take another strike from me! You've already lost. If I attack again, it will be a killing sword. However, just as the Sword Doluo was about to swing his sword again, the thin energy sword in front of Chu Bei disappeared. At the same time, his calm voice echoed throughout the entire Seven Treasures glazed sect. What do you mean by that? Chen Xian's brows were tightly furrowed. Halfway through his sentence, he seemed to realize something. His pupils contracted. The white robe he was wearing was split open from top to bottom, one at the front and one at the back. The cut was extremely smooth. How is this possible? When Chen Xian came back to his senses, he tore off the white robe he was wearing. He stared blankly at the front and back of the robe. He kept stepping back and almost fell into the void. He kept murmuring something as if he had lost his mind. Bad guy, what did you do to Grandpa Jian? Ning Rongrong looked at the Sword Doluo, who had aged several years in an instant. She sniffled and shouted at Chu Bei. Tears flowed uncontrollably. Her cries were pitiful. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.